Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Carol Maltesi. Carol Nicole Maltesi was born on September 19, 1995, in a small province in Italy, to parents Fabio and Josephine. Her mother was of Italian descent, while her father had Dutch heritage. When Carol was just 4 years old, her parents divorced, and she remained with her mother. Her father moved back to the Netherlands, where he remarried and had more children. Despite her father's lack of support, Josephine chose to stay in Italy and raise Carol on her own. Carol and her mother lived in a small community called Cesto Kenda. Her mother worked multiple jobs to provide Carol with a good education and opportunities for a better life. As a result, Carol grew into a beautiful, kind, and sociable young woman with many friends and an easy rapport with others. She was an active schoolgirl who participated in sports, such as horseback riding, and regularly attended a dance studio. Carol was fluent in 3 languages, loved traveling across Europe, and was an avid reader who could engage in conversations on a wide range of topics. As Carol entered her teenage years, she had many admirers and enjoyed being the center of attention. After completing her secondary education, Carol enrolled in a technical university to study industrial design, arts, and fashion. During her freshman year, Carol discovered she was pregnant after developing a romantic relationship with a young man studying architecture and design. The pregnancy was unexpected, and both Carol and her father were unprepared. Despite the challenges, Carol decided to keep the baby. In 2016, Carol, then 20 years old, gave birth to a son. The arrival of the baby significantly impacted her life. Due to financial constraints, she had to leave school to support themselves and their child. She relocated to Verona in search of better opportunities to provide for their family. Carol found employment as a sales consultant in a cosmetics and perfume retail chain when her son was 1 year old. Meanwhile, her boyfriend worked on projects from home and took care of their son. However, in mid-2019, Carol's life took another turn when she fell in love with Angelo. They began a passionate affair, secretly meeting in hotel rooms and exchanging messages at night. The affair lasted for about 6 months, during which they tried to spend as much time together as possible. But just before the new year, Carol's boyfriend discovered her infidelity and decided to end their relationship. Carol thought it was for the best that she was leaving, as she had already planned to move in with her new boyfriend. However, they faced a challenge. Angelo lived with his parents, and Carol couldn't join him with her child from a previous relationship. They decided to rent a place together, but their plans were disrupted, which left them jobless and unable to afford a home. Carol had to move into Angelo's parents' house and temporarily leave her 4-year-old son with his biological father. Carol struggled financially, but Angelo and his parents supported her as much as possible. She had to rely on them completely, unable to contribute to her son's care. To make matters worse, her mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which required expensive treatment. In desperation, Carol looked for ways to earn money from home to support her son and ailing mother. She turned to social media and created a YouTube channel, sharing her experiences of life in isolation. Although her content didn't attract much attention, her striking appearance drew comments, including some unwanted and inappropriate proposals. A subscriber suggested that Carol create an account on the adult content platform OnlyFans, citing her attractive appearance and potential for quick success. Taking this advice, Carol registered under the pseudonym Charlotte Angel and began posting intimate photos and videos. She quickly gained a large following and started earning a substantial income. As time went on, Carol's content became more explicit and bold and was appreciated by her fans. However, she keeps her work a secret from her boyfriend and relatives. This secrecy was short-lived because an acquaintance of hers discovered her account about 6 months later. Although Carol tried to justify her work as an art form that gave her financial security and personal fulfillment, her acquaintances did not accept it. Friends and acquaintances gradually distanced themselves from her, believing that her work was immoral and fearing that association with her would damage their reputations. Carol saw this reaction as prejudice and remained confident that she would achieve success and wealth as an adult film star. Carol's newfound popularity attracted the attention of adult film studios, and several directors approached her with offers to star in their productions. She soon accepted the invitation and participated in group photo sessions. Unbeknownst to her, her activities went unnoticed, and her boyfriend, Angelo, was shocked to discover that she was not working remotely as a designer as she had claimed she would. He felt lost and didn't know how to react because he had no plans to end their relationship. However, when Angelo's parents learned of Carol's profession, they urged him to end the relationship immediately, fearing she would bring shame to their family. At that time, Carol achieved financial stability thanks to her popular OnlyFans account and increasing salaries from film directors. In interviews, she expressed her intention to eventually complete her education and pursue a career in design or modeling. However, she increasingly loved her current job and was completely immersed in it. Despite her success, Carol faced constant moral pressure from those around her, who judged and tried to shame her. This led to certain psychological trauma. She defended her profession, calling it art, and supported women's right to choose a career without fear of judgment or social consequences. At the age of 25, Carol moved to Rescaldina, a small town in the province of Milan, with the intention of starting again. She planned to abandon her career in the adult entertainment industry and secure a job as a sales consultant at a perfume shop. However, this job of hers only lasted for a short time. A few months later, Carol met David Fontana, a 42-year-old local banker with a passion for photography, especially nude photography. They connected online, where David was searching for photo models for his projects. Carol reciprocated his offer, and upon their first meeting, they felt an intense mutual attraction. Despite being married, David pursued a relationship with Carol and they began dating. Their relationship involved photo sessions that often led to intimate encounters. David soon discovered Carol's past experience in the adult industry and encouraged her to resume her career, citing her talent. However, David's feelings for Carol were complex. He loved her, desired to possess her, and also enjoyed watching her in adult films. In March 2021, David divorced his wife and moved in with Carol, allowing them to explore their most explicit fantasies together. He assisted her in creating content for OnlyFans, a platform where she gained immense popularity. However, David took a share of the profits from their joint work. As Carol's success grew, she began receiving lucrative offers from foreign directors and studios for film shoots. David was a jealous boyfriend who would become annoyed when others showed interest in Carol in public or tried to flirt with her. However, he never interfered with her work as an adult film actress, treating it as a normal job that she felt comfortable with. On the other hand, after Angelo and Carol broke up, Angelo confessed that he had missed her and asked to get back together, saying that he would accept her profession and not restrict her freedom. Carol appreciated Angelo's efforts but revealed that she had already met someone else. Even so, Angelo and Carol continued to communicate. However, when David found out, he became angry, threatened Angelo, and burned his car and finally broke up with Carol. Angelo reported the incident to the police, who issued a restraining order against David, but ultimately found no evidence linking him to arson. As Carol's career took off, Carol frequently traveled for filming and attracted a large following. She was trying to buy a house for herself and her son and planned to leave the adult film industry to focus on raising her son. To achieve this goal, she started creating custom videos for fans, who would send her scripts and pay her to make their fantasies come true. This idea brought high profits to Carol. Carol and David continued to work together in film despite their personal separation. During a September 2021 film shoot, Carol met co-star Salvatore Galdo, and a romance blossomed. She and Salvatore eventually formalized their relationship, deciding to get married after taking the time to ensure they were both ready to move forward. As they planned their future together, they made a conscious effort to maintain their independence and keep their relationship private. They had learned from past experiences and wanted to approach their new relationship with a clear understanding of each other's needs and boundaries. In the end, Carol and Salvatore were able to build a strong foundation for their relationship, free from the entanglements of their past. They were able to move forward together, focusing on their shared future and leaving their complicated pasts behind. Carol's social media activity had slowed down significantly. Although new posts occasionally appeared on her account, she rarely interacted with anyone, keeping her responses brief. Her latest photos suggested she had recently gone on a seaside vacation, but she hadn't shared her plans with anyone. Everything was happening peacefully. But on March 20th, 2022, in a deserted area near Italian Borno, a passerby had made a disturbing discovery. He had been walking along a cliff when he had spotted large black bags of trash on a slope near a body of water. He had felt uncomfortable seeing garbage in such a beautiful location, so he had decided to throw it away. When he had approached one of the bags, he had noticed that it was unusually heavy. His curiosity had turned to horror when he had seen human fingers poking out through the tear in the polyethylene plastic. The man who quickly contacted the police, and when officers arrived, they found 4 bags with a human body that had been divided into 18 parts. Due to the extreme disfigurement, identifying the remains seemed unlikely. Forensic analysis showed that the victim was a young woman who had been deceased for at least 2 months, but the cause of death could not be determined. It was clear that the body had been stored in a freezer before being thrown off a cliff in a remote area, likely with the intention of remaining hidden for a long time. Upon impact, the bags tore, spilling some of the contents. The perpetrator had attempted to conceal the victim's identity by removing any distinctive features, such as tattoos, although damaged remnants of these tattoos still existed. The skin in those areas had been severely damaged with burns from hot objects, cuts, and acid. Despite this, police were able to piece together fragments of the tattoos and compare them with a missing persons database. A breakthrough came when a news report about the body was broadcast, asking anyone who might recognize the described features to come forward. Shortly after, a woman who worked in adult films visited the police station and identified the tattoos as belonging to a colleague who had disappeared in early January. The actress knew the deceased as Charlotte, but did not know her real name. This new information was crucial, as it allowed police to establish the victim's identity and real name. Once her identity was known, it was revealed that she had become engaged to Salvatore Galdo, a colleague, shortly before her disappearance. However, Galdo had not reported his fiancée missing, which raised suspicions. He was detained as the first suspect, but he appeared genuinely distraught over his fiancée's death and puzzled as to why he was under suspicion. According to Salvatore, he had been in regular contact with his fiancée through messaging apps and social media, and he had proof of their correspondence. He claimed that Carol had caught sick and was self-isolating, which is why he hadn't visited her. When asked why he hadn't called to check on her, he said he had spoken with David Fontana, who lived nearby and had promised to care for her. Although Salvatore's story was unclear and unconvincing, his testimony led police to a second suspect who needed to be questioned. However, before police could search for David, he appeared at the station to report a missing person. This was a surprising turn of events. David had not been following the news and did not expect the body to be found so quickly. When he learned that Carol's body had been discovered and identified, he became worried. But when Salvatore was arrested, David realized the police would likely find him, as he had communicated with Salvatore by phone and fabricated a story about taking care of Carol while she had sick. When questioned, David appeared nervous and gave conflicting accounts of his relationship with Carol. He claimed he and Carol were close, but they had not seen each other in months and she had suddenly stopped contacting him. After hours of questioning, David finally cracked under the pressure and began confessing that he had accidentally killed Carol, claiming it had happened in early January during a filming session for a client who had paid a large amount of money. The script had called for him to tie and gag Carol, put a bag over her head, and brutally beat and torture her with tools, including a hammer. David and Carol had agreed that David wouldn't hit her too hard, but she would act like she was in a lot of pain. However, David claimed he had accidentally delivered a hammer blow and fractured her skull. When he removed the bag, he saw that she was about to die, but instead of seeking medical help, he had decided to end her suffering with one last blow of the hammer. But surprisingly, the investigation revealed that the mysterious customer was actually David, who contacted Carol using a fake account. He had come up with a revenge plan because Carol had wanted to leave him. At about 9 p.m. on January 11th, David had used a hammer to kill Carol. The next day, he had bought a large freezer using Carol's credit card, as well as a saw and axe from a hardware store, which he had used to dismember her body. David had attempted to disfigure her body to prevent identification by removing her tattoos and skin and attempting to burn and shred the rest. After murdering Carol, David stored her body parts in bags and kept them in a freezer for over 2 months. During this time, he deceived her relatives and friends by communicating with them through her phone and social media accounts, creating the illusion that she was still alive. By the end of March, David thought it was safe to dispose of the body and dumped it off a cliff in a remote area. He hoped that the remains would either never be found or would have decomposed beyond recognition by the time they were discovered. However, the body was found just 2 days later, and authorities tracked David down within a week. The most puzzling aspect of the case is that none of Carol's relatives or friends reported her missing, despite her disappearance occurring nearly 3 months prior. They were all convinced by the messages and social media posts David had created, and even her fiancé, who thought she was ill, didn't become alarmed when she failed to answer his calls or visit him. If someone had raised the alarm, David would have been tracked immediately through the signal from Carol's phone, which he had kept with him the entire time. At the trial, David expressed remorse and claimed he loved Carol, stating that her death was unintentional. He also said he had planned to end his own life after her death, unable to cope with the grief. Although this statement seemed implausible, the defense maintained that the incident was an unintentional act of violence. On June 12, 2023, David was found guilty of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison and ordered to pay compensation to Carol's son, Carol's mother, and the father of Carol's child, totaling €350,000. Notably, the court did not consider the manner of the killing to be cruel, and the dismemberment of the body was not deemed an aggravating factor. As a result, David may be eligible for parole in the future. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Summer Baldwin. Summer Baldwin, born in 1976 in Washington, was renowned for her kind and vibrant personality. As a bright student with many friends, she aspired to pursue an acting career. Following high school, Summer enrolled in community college but struggled with her studies. Seeking a change of environment and new opportunities, she moved to Texas with her friends, supported by her parents who hoped she could start anew. However, it is uncertain when Summer's life started to decline. She struggled with addiction to alcohol and illicit drugs, but unfortunately did not reach out to her family for support. As her addiction worsened, she lost her job and began associating with people who had a history of crime. Her dreams of becoming an actress were shattered, and she was eventually forced to work as an escort to make ends meet. Summer's parents remained oblivious to their daughter's struggles, believing she was living a successful life. The information provided about Summer's friends was limited. However, a significant detail emerged. A few months before her death, Summer had been a key witness in a major federal counterfeiting case. This revelation suggested that her murder might have been a contract killing by a criminal gang, drawing the attention of the FBI and putting the investigation under intense scrutiny. The investigation led to the first suspects. Rebecca, Summer's best friend, was called in for questioning by the police. She provided insight into Summer's occupation and mentioned several of her boyfriends, one of whom had a history of aggressive behavior, including physical abuse and persistent stalking after their breakup. This man became the initial suspect in the case. Summer's ex-boyfriend was detained and brought to the station on the same day. However, he vehemently denied any involvement in the case and appeared genuinely surprised and distraught upon learning of Summer's death. Furthermore, he had a solid alibi for the night before the tragedy, having been involved in a drunken brawl at a bar and spending the night in a cell with another individual. As a result, the police were forced to release the first and, at the time, only suspect. Another friend and colleague of Summer named Marguerite provided crucial information to the investigation. Marguerite reported that she saw Summer on the evening of September 11th at a convenience store parking lot. They had a brief conversation. Marguerite recalled that a red van pulled into the parking lot, and a young, physically fit Latino man got out to enter the store, likely to make a purchase. While he was inside, Summer exited the van from the passenger side to greet Marguerite. Summer mentioned that the man was a client she had met for the second time in recent days. After the man returned to the van, he got behind the wheel, and Summer quickly re-entered the vehicle. Marguerite didn't notice which direction the van took when it left, nor did she know where Summer and the man were headed. She noted that she had never seen the man before and thought he was not from the area. Her description of him was limited due to the darkness, but she remembered that he had very short hair, similar to a military style. On September 13, 2005, a sanitation worker discovered a suspicious suitcase in a landfill in Lubbock City, Texas, USA. When he opened the suitcase, he was startled to see the body of a woman with red hair. The victim's body had many bruises. The victim's leg was tattooed with the word Summer. The suitcase, which tragically became her coffin, presented a peculiar appearance. Externally, it was covered in garbage and waste, yet surprisingly, it showed no signs of wear and tear, and its wheels appeared brand new. Upon closer inspection, the interior revealed perfectly intact tags and a lining that seemed untouched, giving the impression that the suitcase was brand new. Notably, the plastic attachment for the price tag remained intact, suggesting that the purchaser had not removed it. Further investigation revealed that this particular brand of suitcase was widely available in numerous stores throughout the city. However, this specific large model was only sold in 2 stores. A crucial breakthrough came when the perfectly preserved barcode led investigators to a Walmart store in the same area where Summer was last seen alive. Records showed that 2 identical suitcases were purchased on the day preceding the gruesome discovery, one in the afternoon and the other around 2 a.m., a timing that raised suspicions due to its unusual nature. Police officers promptly visited the store and obtained the surveillance camera footage. After reviewing the footage, they discovered that an elderly couple had purchased the first suitcase. Initially, they didn't raise any suspicions, but they were tracked down and were able to present the suitcase, explaining that it was bought for a vacation. However, the second suitcase was purchased by a young, athletic Latino man with very short hair, similar to a military haircut. This raised suspicions that he might be the person seen with Summer in the supermarket parking lot, as described by a witness. Additionally, the man bought disposable gloves at checkout, further arousing suspicions. The store's external surveillance cameras provided more information, showing the man leaving the store with the suitcase and loading it into a red van. With too many coincidences, the police believed they had identified the suspect and now needed to confirm his identity, locate him, and bring him in for questioning. The man took extreme precautions to avoid detection, using cash instead of a credit card to prevent leaving a digital trail. However, he overlooked the parking lot surveillance cameras, which clearly captured his vehicle's license plate number. The police quickly tracked the vehicle to a rental car company and identified the renter as Rosendo Rodriguez, a reservist in the U.S. Marine Corps. Rosendo had a clean record and was in town for a brief training stint with his unit. Initially, it was difficult for the police to locate Rosendo, as he wasn't staying at the same hotel as his unit. But with his personal details in hand, the police discovered that he had withdrawn a large sum of cash from an ATM at a different hotel, likely the money used to purchase the suitcase and gloves. Further investigation revealed that Rosendo had checked into this hotel under the name Thomas Rosendo, matching his physical description, on September 11th. It appeared that Rosendo had used an alias for unknown reasons. The investigation got a lucky break. Although Rosendo had already checked out of his hotel room, it hadn't been cleaned yet, and it contained crucial evidence. The carpet, bed, and walls had brown stains and splatters that looked like dried blood. A tag from a new suitcase was found near the bed. The trash had used contraceptives and disposable gloves in it. Forensic analysis confirmed the dried blood belonged to Summer. DNA on the contraceptives and gloves matched both Summer and Rosendo. This proved they had found the killer. However, Rosendo had already left the city by then. With this information, it was easy to track him down. Rosendo Rodriguez was born on March 26, 1980, in Wichita Falls, Texas. He came from a low-income family of Mexican immigrants and had a difficult childhood. His father, who struggled with alcoholism, was abusive to his wife and children. As a result, Rosendo was exposed to violence from an early age. He was aggressive and frequently got into fights at school. However, as he matured, he learned to manage his anger. After finishing high school, Rosendo attended Texas Tech University. He lived on his own and worked various jobs, including at a pizzeria and as an office clerk. Eventually, he decided to join the U.S. Marine Corps. His colleagues in the military described him as calm, disciplined, and reliable. They also saw him as a good friend who was always willing to help. Rosendo was well-educated and physically attractive, making him popular with women. On September 15th, Rosendo was arrested at his home in San Antonio. When the police arrived, he remained calm and seemed unaware of the seriousness of the situation. During the search, the police found a striped shirt and shorts that matched the outfit he wore when buying a suitcase. This was caught on surveillance footage. The police also seized his laptop and mobile phone. Initially, Rosendo refused to speak and denied any involvement in Summer Baldwin's murder for several weeks. However, faced with overwhelming evidence against him, he began to provide statements on the advice of his attorney. In these statements, he shared his own account of events, which notably diverged from the reconstruction put together by forensic experts. Rosendo initially stayed at a different hotel than his fellow servicemen due to a booking mistake. Although he realized the error after checking in, he chose not to relocate since the military leadership deemed it unnecessary. However, he failed to explain why he used a different name to register at the hotel on September 10th. That evening, Rosendo rented a van to get around the city more easily. He claimed to have met Summer Baldwin by coincidence. According to his account, he spotted a blonde woman sitting on a roadside bench, covering her face with her hands and seemingly crying. Concerned, he pulled over to check on her and see if she needed assistance. They started talking, and after she calmed down, they went to his hotel room, where they chatted, had a few drinks, but did not engage in any intimate activities. The next morning, Rosendo drove Summer home. They made plans to meet again in the evening. At around 9 p.m., he picked her up from the same location and they went to a supermarket. There, Summer ran into her friend Marjorie. Afterward, they returned to the hotel. According to Rosendo, he and Summer engaged in consensual intimacy at the hotel. However, the situation took a turn when Summer allegedly became aggressive and demanded money. This caught Rosendo off guard, as he claimed he was unaware that Summer was a sex worker. When he refused to pay, Summer reportedly pulled out a knife and threatened him. Rosendo managed to disarm her and punched her in the face, causing her nose to bleed. He claimed that he was acting in self-defense and did not intend to harm her. Shortly after, Summer collapsed onto the bed and began convulsing, foaming at the mouth. Rosendo stated that he attempted to help her but was hesitant to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation due to the blood and foam on her face. After a minute, Summer stopped breathing. Realizing Summer was dead, Rosendo panicked. He went to a nearby store, purchased a suitcase and gloves, and returned to the hotel. He then placed Summer's body in the suitcase and disposed of it in a dumpster, knowing it would be taken to the landfill the next morning. Afterward, he checked out of the hotel, returned the rental car, and drove back to San Antonio, pretending as though nothing had happened. Inconsistencies in the suspect's story raised suspicions among investigators. Rosendo Rodriguez's lies were evident due to numerous discrepancies in his account. One inconsistency arose when Marjorie, who met Summer in the parking lot on the night of the crime, stated that Summer mentioned the man was a client she had previously met for a paid encounter. However, Rosendo claimed their interaction was consensual, which contradicts evidence on Summer's body indicating she was taken advantage of. It is possible their initial encounter was consensual, leading Summer to agree to meet him again. Rosendo also claimed he only hit Summer once to calm her down, and she died from a seizure. But the autopsy revealed around 30 fresh bruises on Baldwin's head and body, as well as several stab wounds. Furthermore, evidence indicates she was alive when he packed her into the suitcase, which contradicts his claim that she was already dead. A search of Rosendo's laptop revealed a disturbing information in the days leading up to his arrest. He had been actively searching for information about Summer, including whether she was being searched for and if her body had been found in a landfill. Rosendo also frequently searched for information on Joanna Catherine Rogers, a 16-year-old girl from Lubbock who had gone missing a year and a half prior. Rosendo agreed to a plea deal that included a reduced sentence and no death penalty in exchange for explaining what happened to Joanna. He said he met Joanna, a high school student, in late April 2004. After a few meetings, they went to his hotel room on May 4th, where they got into an argument over money and potential rape allegations. The argument escalated, and Rosendo panicked, covering Joanna's mouth to quiet her, which unintentionally led to her death. In a desperate attempt to dispose of the body, Rosendo put it in his suitcase and threw it into a dumpster. This was the same method he used a year and a half later to dispose of Summer's body. Initially, Rosendo admitted to these events but later claimed his confession was false and that he had been coerced into making it. The police realized they needed to find Joanna's body to build a stronger case, so they launched a massive search of the city dump. Over a year later, they made a miraculous discovery, a suitcase containing Joanna's remains, despite severe decomposition. DNA testing confirmed the identity of the remains. This new evidence allowed authorities to charge Rosendo as a serial offender with a consistent modus operandi, committing similar heinous crimes. During the trial, the verdict was clear: Rosendo was guilty of first-degree murder. The court decided on the death penalty, largely due to the fact that Summer Baldwin was 3 months pregnant when she was murdered. This aggravating factor was a key consideration in the sentencing. Rosendo was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Rosendo and his lawyers filed multiple appeals, claiming errors and misconduct by investigators. However, all appeals were rejected. While on death row, Rosendo maintained a blog on criminal justice and policy issues. On March 27, 2018, Rosendo Rodriguez was executed for his crimes at Huntsville Prison in Texas, one day after his 38th birthday. This marked the 4th execution in Texas and the 7th in the United States that year, nearly a decade after his conviction. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kimberly Antonakis. Kimberly Antonakis was born in 1974 in New York, USA. She was the only child in the family. Despite the fact that she grew up in love and affluence, she was not pampered. Her parents came from simple families. Nevertheless, her father Thomas managed to achieve considerable heights. He created his own company, which was engaged in computers, earned funds. The man was happy to spend on his favorite daughter and her desires. When Kimberly was a little girl, her parents divorced. The child was left to live with her mother. However, this did not weaken the connection between the little girl and her father. He took her on weekends and spent all his free time with her. When Kimberly's mother found a new man and decided to move to Florida, she faced a choice to stay with her mother or with her father. Since she didn't want to move, the young lady decided to live with her father. Kimberly was very close to her father and enjoyed living with him. As she grew up, she became a well-behaved, sociable child and eventually a stunning young woman with a radiant smile that always lifted her spirits. She had a great sense of humor and a positive attitude. Kimberly was raised in a sheltered environment, surrounded by love and care, which protected her from the harsh realities of life. As a result, she only saw the good in people and was largely unaware of the darker aspects of life. Unfortunately, her open and kind nature would eventually lead to many sorrows. In 1994, Kimberly enrolled at the College of Staten Island. Shortly after, she told her father that she felt ready to live on her own. Although Mr. Kimberly was worried about her decision, he respected her independence and decided not to oppose it. He promised himself that he would do his best to ensure her safety and well-being in her new living arrangements. Kimberly bought a nice apartment for his daughter, located in a wealthy area of the city, and installed an alarm system to ensure her safety. He also purchased a parking space in the garage across the street so she wouldn't have to park far away. To stay in touch, he provided her with a cell phone and a pager. Kimberly did everything in his power to ensure his daughter's well-being. His concerns for her safety were well-founded, given his wealth and her limited life experience. Kimberly was a diligent student who also worked part-time as an accountant at a reputable firm. She had declined her father's offer to join the family business, opting instead to forge her own path. Kimberly led a typical student life, attending parties and socializing with friends. She declined her father's offers to return home, wanting to maintain independence. This led to an unexpected situation when she let friend Liz Pace and her family stay while their apartment was being renovated in early 1995. Kimberly, with a kind heart, invited young people to her lodging. They spent days having fun together. One day, Kimberly and a friend attended a party, getting ready and dressing up. After a fun night of dancing, Kimberly drove them home but didn't go up, citing unfinished business. They hugged goodbye, unaware they'd never see each other again. After visiting the police, Mr. Kimberly's father, went to the parking lot next to her house, only to find that her car was missing from the garage. As he looked around, he spotted a shiny object on the floor near the wall, a small gold earring. He recalled giving his daughter similar earrings and, just in case, picked it up. However, Kimberly was nowhere to be found in the apartment. Instead, he met her guests, including a friend, her boyfriend Joshua Torres, and their 2-year-old child. Although Kimberly was aware of Kimberly's decision, he didn't agree with it. The tenants were worried about the hostess's absence and Joshua offered to help find her. He said he was looking for Kimberly and would assist later. Kimberly returned to the police station, explaining that his daughter had been in an accident, but the officers remained unconvinced. Kimberly decided to speak with Liz Pace, the last person to see Kimberly, and showed her the jewelry he had found. Liz Pace confirmed that she had seen Kimberly wearing those earrings on the night she disappeared. Kimberly then visited the places his daughter frequently went to, talking to many people, but didn't gather any significant information. Joshua suggested searching not only for Kimberly but also for her distinctive car. Kimberly went to the police station for the third time, insisting that he wouldn't leave until they began a search. A detective eventually responded to his appeal, agreeing to take on the investigation despite the usual protocol. To better understand the events surrounding Kimberly Antonakis' disappearance, investigators started by reconstructing her activities on February 28. Kimberly began the day by attending college, followed by a few hours of work. After work, she returned home and had dinner with friends before heading out to a party with a friend named Liz Pace. The evening concluded with their return home around 4 a.m. Following her return, Kimberly went to the parking lot for reasons that remain unclear. Both her apartment and garage were thoroughly searched, but no signs of struggle or foreign fingerprints were found. This lack of evidence suggested either a meticulous cleanup or that any potential intruder may have worn gloves. The most puzzling aspect was the disappearance of Kimberly and her car without any trace, except for a single earring that was found. An analysis of Kimberly's bank account revealed that her last transaction occurred the evening before she vanished, ruling out the possibility that she had run away from home. Based on the evidence, detectives hypothesized that Kimberly was likely kidnapped. The investigation expanded to include additional police officers. Due to the lack of concrete leads, law enforcement considered information from a psychic. Witness interviews began with Liz Pace and Joshua. They revealed 65 calls were made from Kimberly's landline on March 1st. Joshua explained he made these calls to locate Kimberly, who was like a little sister to him. Liz Pace's testimony helped determine Kimberly's clothing, and a portrait was created, highlighting her distinctive tattoos, including a scorpion and infinity sign. Meanwhile, a search for the missing car was underway, with checks at scrap metal collection points and other locations where the vehicle might be found. Unfortunately, no positive results were obtained. A check of Kimberly's cell phone was also unsuccessful. Police advised Kimberly to pay attention to any letters or phone calls he received, as they might be from Kimberly's kidnappers demanding a ransom. The Kimberly family remained in a state of uncertainty until March 4th. At approximately 2 a.m., emergency services responded to a reported fire at a large, abandoned house located at 86 Woodhaven Avenue in Queens. Multiple fire crews battled the blaze until it was finally extinguished. Upon investigation, a charred body was discovered in the basement of the building. Further analysis by forensic experts revealed the deceased was a woman between 20 to 25 years old, with remnants of long, black hair still intact. There were also signs of tape and evidence that her legs had been bound, with her hands tied behind her back. The most disturbing aspect, however, was that she was alive at the time of the fire, as indicated by the presence of smoke in her lungs. Detectives initially suspected that the body might belong to Kimberly, a missing person. To confirm the identity, dental records were required. Meanwhile, an inspection of the ashes and the air revealed the scent of gasoline, strongly suggesting that the fire had been intentionally set to destroy evidence of a serious crime. Despite the absence of other evidence, the charred body remained, and upon closer examination, specialists found tattoos matching the description of the missing woman. The records from the dental clinic supported the investigation's suspicions, leading to the discovery of Kimberly Antonakis' body. As more details emerged, an eyewitness came forward who often walked his dog in the area. The dog had been acting strangely in the days prior to the fire, appearing nervous and barking at the house for no apparent reason. It wasn't until after the fire and the discovery of the body that the cause of the dog's behavior became clear. She had attempted to escape and called for help, but her cries went unheard by humans. However, the dog's acute hearing allowed it to detect the sounds coming from the basement, explaining its unusual behavior. When questioned by officers, the homeowner revealed that he had visited the building multiple times in recent days. He was trying to sell the house and would regularly check on its condition, collect mail, and pick up receipts. However, he only inspected the house from the outside and never went into the basement. The homeowner claimed he never heard any suspicious noises, and if he had, he would have investigated. Investigators decided to re-question Joshua, as they had some reservations about him. They also found it strangely coincidental that his name started with the letter J. This time, Joshua mentioned a person he hadn't been able to contact the day Kimberly went missing, a young man nicknamed Psycho, a Russian national who had previously dated Kimberly. The detectives looked into this new information and discovered that the Russian had moved to the US with his parents at a young age. As he grew older, he became involved with a gang and had a history of breaking the law. This led to the identification of the first suspect, who was soon taken into custody. During interrogation, Psycho was informed of his former lover's death, but his reaction shocked the detectives. The young man not only denied involvement in the crime, but he also showed genuine emotional distress. Investigators took him to the crime scene to observe his behavior, and it became clear to everyone that they had the wrong person in custody. Later, his alibi was confirmed, leaving the investigation at a standstill once again. The victim's family sought the psychic's help again. This time, she claimed to have seen 4 people involved in the crime. According to her, the kidnappers had initially intended to establish communication but failed. The kidnapping didn't seem to have been planned with a tragic outcome. The psychic concluded that new information would emerge soon. A couple of days later, Mr. Kimberly, hoping to gather some leads, announced a $10,000 reward for information that could help catch the perpetrator. Mr. Kimberly couldn't shake off the psychic's words. He pondered the psychic's statement about the kidnappers wanting to make contact. What could that mean, and what had prevented them from doing so? Upon returning home, he sat at the table and stared at his phone for a while. He suddenly recalled a minor detail from the day Kimberly went missing. He had listened to all the answering machine recordings as he had been expecting his girl to contact him. However, there were no messages, except for 2 blank ones with complete silence. He initially thought it was a technical issue or a problem with the connection. But it later became clear that this was not the case. 5 days after her body was found, the police located her car in a quiet area of town, not far from where her body was discovered. The investigators were hoping to find fingerprints in the car, but it had been thoroughly cleaned. The only evidence they found was her hair and a second earring in the passenger compartment. Although it seemed like a breakthrough, it didn't lead anywhere. Kimberly, her father, was linked to a local mob hit due to his wealth and success. However, detectives found no evidence to support the rumors. Kimberly, grieving the loss of his daughter, denied any involvement and was found to conduct his business openly and honestly. In July 1995, a burglary suspect was arrested at a New York City residence. Surprisingly, he shared information about the Kimberly case. The suspect claimed an acquaintance told him that his friends had kidnapped and killed she by burning her. Upon hearing the unidentified man's name, the officers pieced together the crime. The man in question was Joshua Torres, Kimberly's roommate who had participated in the search for her. Detectives took a closer look at the young man, calling him in for further questioning. Although he denied any involvement in the crime, a lengthy conversation revealed a potentially incriminating statement. He mentioned that if he were the kidnapper, he would have fed the victim Kimberly. This statement raised suspicions since there had been no public mention of the victim's hunger, thirst, or cold, and not even her father was aware of these details. To strengthen their case, investigators examined the suspect's past, finding a criminal record and a pattern of obsessive behavior. He was jobless and financially dependent on his roommate, caring for her child, which gave him unmonitored time to plan the crime. Knowing Kimberly's daily routine allowed him to abduct her and hide her in a vacant house. It was unclear why no ransom demands were made. Analyzing the suspect's calls revealed he lied about contacting Kimberly's acquaintances. The dialed numbers belonged to random individuals with no connection to Kimberly. Suspicious messages on his pager further implicated the suspect, Joshua. He had long been a suspect in the eyes of detectives, and they finally gathered enough evidence to arrest him. During the interrogation, they informed him that Kimberly's ex-boyfriend was no longer considered a suspect. Pressed for more information, Torres revealed that he suspected his friends of being responsible for her murder. Torres claimed that he thought his friends only intended to kidnap Kimberly for ransom and then release her unharmed. He admitted to being an accessory to the kidnapping but maintained that he did not think his friends would resort to violence. According to Torres, the plan was to demand a ransom and then let Kimberly go, but things did not go as planned. The kidnappers became frustrated when their ransom demands were met with silence from Mr. Kimberly. Unbeknownst to them, their calls had been answered by Kimberly's father, and a ransom message had even been recorded. However, due to a technical issue, the recording was not saved on the answering machine. The kidnappers, feeling ignored and angered by the lack of response, decided to wait and see how events would unfold. It turns out the group feared public attention, and the psychics claim that the suspect's name began with the letter J. This information was published and broadcast on TV, creating a cycle of events. Joshua was released on bail after speaking with the police, but then disappeared. Around the same time, Jose was shot while walking with his wife. Jose's wife later told investigators that her husband didn't trust Joshua and had been gathering evidence against him. She claimed Jose felt guilty about kidnapping Kimberly but not about the house fire. He wanted to confess to the police, just as he had to her. The pager messages and suspect statements helped investigators piece together the kidnapping and crime details. 4 men were involved: Joshua, Julio Negrin, Jose Negrin, and Nicholas Brett, also known as Jay. Notably, Julio had previously dated Kimberly and proposed, but she rejected him. The group was united by friendship and a shared criminal past. However, their actions were far surpassed by the horrific treatment of she at the hands of the guys. Nicholas had recently been released on bail, thanks to his mother's intervention, and had received a lenient fine for a crime that could have resulted in a prison sentence of over a year. Joshua had a history of serious offenses, including child abduction, violence against a minor, and illegal possession of weapons, despite his young age. Nevertheless, he too had received an inappropriately light sentence for his crimes. It was evident that Joshua was the ringleader, responsible for coordinating the group's actions. After Kimberly left the party, the men seized her in the parking lot, having apparently been stalking her and waiting for the ideal moment to strike when she was alone. A gun was used to intimidate Kimberly. When she resisted, the perpetrators tied her hands and covered her mouth, eyes, and ears with duct tape. They then put her in the trunk of a car and drove her to an abandoned house, where she was taken to the basement and tied to a chair. To prevent her from making noise, they removed her shoes. The kidnappers told Kimberly that her father owed them money and that she would be released once he paid the debt. Julio was tasked with caring for Kimberly, bringing her food and water twice a day, and keeping her warm. However, fearing the consequences, Julio abandoned the house, leaving Kimberly without food, water, or warmth for 3 days. Once Julio left, the kidnappers informed Joshua, who made an audio recording demanding a ransom of $775,000. Then, the kidnapper called Kimberly's father, leaving 2 empty messages. The kidnappers waited for a response, genuinely confused as to why Kimberly's father didn't contact them. Meanwhile, Kimberly, left unattended, suffered from dehydration, passing out multiple times, yet continued to fight for her life. The kidnappers grew angry and fearful of being caught due to the lack of ransom payment, so they decided to release Kimberly. Upon entering the basement, they found her unconscious and assumed she was dead. To eliminate evidence in the hostage, they planned to get rid of her. During the investigation, officers learned from Liz Pace that Joshua used his roommate as an alibi, directing his accomplices while staying at home with his child. Liz Pace initially claimed she was unaware of Joshua's involvement in Kimberly's kidnapping. However, at the trial, she testified against him. She stated that after being interrogated, Joshua approached her and confessed to all his crimes. However, he then turned violent, physically assaulting her, silencing her, and issuing death threats before fleeing. Some time later, Joshua was apprehended by law enforcement. In an effort to further the investigation, the authorities decided to bring the former friends together, informing them that Joshua had denied any involvement in the massacre. Upon learning of Joshua's denial, Julio chose to cooperate with the investigation, revealing crucial information. This cooperation played a pivotal role in securing Torres' conviction for Kimberly's murder. Ultimately, the trio faced charges of murder, arson, kidnapping, and unlawful imprisonment. During the trial, evidence emerged that Joshua had made repeated attempts to deceive investigators and evade punishment. After deliberating for approximately 10 hours, the jury reached a verdict. Joshua Torres was sentenced to 58 years in prison. Nicholas Brett received the same sentence as the others. Julio Negrin was found guilty of being an accessory after the fact and was sentenced to 2 to 6 years in prison. Tomas Kimberly, the victim's family member, was satisfied with the court's verdict and did not want the perpetrators to receive the death penalty. In his opinion, the death penalty would have been too lenient a punishment. Nicholas Brett was repeatedly abused and assaulted in prison and died of AIDS after serving 2 years. Julio Negrin was released after serving his 2-year sentence. Joshua will not be eligible for release until 2053 at the earliest. Tragically, sadly, Kimberly's father, Kimberly, passed away from cancer in 2005. His family believes that the stress and grief caused by his daughter's death contributed to his illness. The life of Kimberly Antonakis, a beautiful young girl, was cut short in a shocking and devastating manner. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Susan Wright. Susan Lucille Wright was born on April 24, 1976, in Houston, Texas, to parents Velma Sue and Jimmy Lawrence Wright. She was the eldest of 2 children and had a biological sister named Cindy. As a child, Susan was active, sociable, and creatively talented. During her school years, she developed a passion for dancing and aspired to become a choreographer. With her bright and attractive appearance, as well as her slender figure, she drew many admirers and being the center of attention. After completing high school, Susan tried but was unsuccessful in getting into college. To raise funds for her future education, she decided to take some time off. During this period, she found work as a dancer at a well-known nightclub, performing partially nude on stage. She decided to leave her job and use her savings to enroll in evening courses at a nursing school. To support herself and maintain her independence, Susan took a job as a waitress at a restaurant while pursuing her studies. However, she soon discovered that medicine was not her real passion and had trouble paying for her studies. Consequently, she stopped attending her classes to concentrate on her job. In the summer of 1997, 21-year-old Susan met her future husband, Jeffrey Andrew Wright, at the Galveston restaurant where she worked. He was immediately drawn to her beauty and radiant smile, becoming a regular customer and leaving generous tips. After some time, Jeffrey mustered the courage to ask Susan for her phone number. He would call her daily, sometimes multiple times a day, to arrange romantic dates and surprise her with small gestures, such as sending flowers with heartfelt notes to her workplace. In the evenings, he would meet her and walk her home. The man was 8 years older than Susan, but she didn't consider this a significant issue. He was charming, attentive, and caring, which quickly won her over. However, it soon became apparent that Jeffrey struggled with alcohol and substance abuse. He claimed to have overcome his addiction to drugs and promised to quit drinking entirely. Susan, being young and in love for the first time, believed him. She thought that their love could conquer any obstacle. Shortly after, Susan discovered she was pregnant and excitedly shared the news with Jeffrey. Although he seemed pleased about becoming a father, he didn't take any decisive action, such as proposing or suggesting they move in together. Confused by Jeffrey's behavior, Susan took matters into her own hands. She insisted that their child should be born within a married family, and Jeffrey agreed to her terms. By the time they officially got married, Susan was already 8 months pregnant. They chose to have a quiet, intimate wedding without guests or celebrations, rather than a grand ceremony. Around this time, they purchased a home in a quiet area of Harris County, Texas, and moved in a couple of weeks before the birth of their child. In December 1998, they welcomed their first child, a son named Bradley, and appeared to be the perfect family. In 2001, Susan became pregnant again, and in the spring of 2002, she gave birth to a daughter named Kay. The family had a small dog named Buck, a comfortable family car. Jeffrey worked at a local construction company, and after the children were born, Susan became a stay-at-home mom by mutual agreement. She took care of the kids and created a cozy home environment. The neighbors said that Mrs. Susan was a kind person, friendly, sociable, a caring mother, and a loving wife. However, it was later revealed that the reality of their family life was far from perfect. Her husband was extremely demanding in every aspect of their lives. Susan's days were filled with cleaning, doing laundry, and cooking. Jeffrey demanded freshly cooked meals every day, prohibiting her from preparing meals in advance or reheating leftovers. Maintaining a perfect and clean home was a challenging task, especially with 2 small children. Additionally, Jeffrey required his clothes to be washed almost daily, as he refused to wear the same item twice. If Susan failed to meet these expectations, she faced insults, humiliation, and even physical abuse. Moreover, Jeffrey was extremely frugal, providing Susan with a meager weekly allowance of $100 to cover all household expenses, including cooking, childcare, and maintenance. Susan had to keep track of every expense, giving receipts to her husband Jeffrey. However, Jeffrey's behavior was a bigger issue. Despite promising to quit drinking, he continued and started using drugs, downplaying it as light doping for work stress. The substances made him aggressive, causing him to harm Susan and their son. Jeffrey denied his behavior was a problem, claiming Susan knew about his substance use before marriage. His parents sympathized with Susan but felt powerless to intervene. After moving in together, Jeffrey's behavior became increasingly aggressive, leading to physical, emotional, and intimate abuse. He initially apologized, but the violence became regular. Jeffrey would often go to the gym 3 times a week to practice boxing as a stress relief measure. He looked forward to sharing this activity with his son when the boy was older. On January 13, 2003, Jeffrey returned home from the gym agitated and on edge. As Susan prepared dinner, he attempted to teach their 5-year-old son some boxing moves but lost control and struck the child, causing the boy to burst into tears. Susan pretended not to notice the incident, but it was the last straw for her. Following dinner, she put the kids to bed. Meanwhile, Jeffrey stayed in the bedroom, where he continued to take drugs. There are different accounts of what happened next. According to Susan, when she went into the room, Jeffrey assaulted her, attempted to rape her, and tried to stab her with a knife. She claimed she fought back in self-defense after managing to take the knife from him. The events that followed are unclear, with different accounts of what happened. According to Susan, when she entered the bedroom, Jeffrey tried to attack her, sexually assault her, and kill her with a knife. However, she claims she managed to grab the knife and defended herself, leading to a fight. Her story changed multiple times, but the version told in court, based on the investigation, was considered more believable. Susan decided to use her dance skills to distract her husband and lower his guard. Wearing a short silk robe over her bare body, she put on a seductive show for Jeffrey. She then suggested a role-playing game that involved tying him up, which he agreed to. Using 3 of Jeffrey's neckties, she bound his hands and one leg to the bed. She used the silk belt from her robe to secure his other leg. With Jeffrey immobilized, Susan created a makeshift gag using her underwear, pretending it was part of the intimate game. To set the mood, she lit candles and turned off the lights. Jeffrey was tied to the bed with a gag in his mouth, unable to move or speak. The room was dimly lit. Jeffrey poured hot wax from a candle onto Jeffrey's chest, which was painful but initially seemed like part of a game they were playing. However, when she poured wax onto his genital area, the pain became unbearable. Jeffrey tried to free himself and scream, but he couldn't. His wife, Susan, took a small sharp knife from the kitchen and began stabbing him repeatedly, starting at his groin and moving up his body, slashing his genitals, legs, abdomen, chest, arms, neck, and face. She began slowly, expressing her grievances with each stab, recounting the insults, humiliations, and abuse she had suffered. As she continued, Susan began to cry and stab faster. Experts later counted 193 shallow knife wounds on Jeffrey's body. Most of these wounds were not fatal, and Jeffrey was conscious for most of the ordeal. Susan's actions suggested she was in a state of extreme emotional distress. Her lawyers argued that she was in a state of affect, unable to stop even when Jeffrey showed no signs of life. She had not considered what she would do next or how she would handle the body. Shallow grave in the backyard. She sat next to her husband's body on the floor for hours. Eventually, she looked around the blood-covered bedroom and knew she had to act before dawn. She carefully checked outside through the window, ensuring the coast was clear. Her gaze landed on a shallow pit in the backyard that Jeffrey had dug for a fountain over the weekend. A plan formed instantly. This pit would become her despised husband's grave. To move the body, Susan used a garden wheelbarrow. This raised questions for investigators, as a petite woman was able to single-handedly lift and transport a man twice her weight out of the house. Suspicions of an accomplice arose but were never confirmed. Under the cover of darkness, Susan discreetly relocated the body to the pit and covered it with a thin layer of soil. She then cleaned up, removing the blood-stained curtains and bed linen, placing them in trash bags and dispersing them in different bins. The blood-soaked mattress was flipped over, as Susan was unsure how to properly clean it. She spent the remaining time until dawn scrubbing blood from the floor, walls, and carpet. Scrubbing the carpet is a big deal, with a large stain that couldn't be removed. In an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the violent confrontation, Susan applied bleach to the affected area, hoping the chemicals would destroy any remaining traces. Susan made a distressing call to her husband's parents in Austin, Texas. She was emotional as she recounted the events. Her husband, under the influence, had physically assaulted her and their son, spilled bleach on the carpet, and then ended their relationship before leaving. Jeffrey's parents were shocked and concerned by the news. Although they were aware that their son had his flaws, they felt genuine sympathy for their daughter-in-law. However, when they learned that he had hit their grandchild, they immediately offered for Susan and the children to come and stay with them. Despite their willingness to help, the young mother declined their offer. She added that she planned to file a police report and reveal all the incidents that had occurred at their residence. 2 days later, Susan visited the police station as her husband's sudden disappearance raised increasing concerns and action was necessary. Susan reported that she and her children had been victims of domestic violence perpetrated by her husband and required protection. She successfully obtained a restraining order against her husband, preventing him from approaching her and the children, although she was already aware that he would never be able to come near them again. As evidence, Susan presented bruises and cuts on her arms, which she alleged were inflicted by her husband using keys when she attempted to defend herself. Additionally, Susan had a small bruise on his face and corroborated that his father had struck him. At first, the tearful woman's story seemed believable and logical. She claimed her husband, under the influence of alcohol and substances, had attacked her and their young son. Then, realizing what he had done, he became scared and fled. However, over time, suspicions grew because Jeffrey had not contacted anyone. He appeared to have run away without his belongings, documents, or mobile phone. He didn't show up for work or visit his parents, and none of his friends or neighbors had seen him. It was as if he had vanished. Susan found it unbearable to stay in the house where she confronted her husband. She couldn't shake the feeling he was still alive and would rise for revenge. She was losing her grip on reality. Even their dog Buck sensed it, constantly barking and trying to dig up the yard where Jeffrey was buried. On January 17th, Susan went to her mother's house with her children. When her mother saw her daughter in person, she fully realized the severity of the situation. Even though she had already been aware of it, Velma directly asked if she had killed her husband, and her daughter broke down in tears, nodding in admission. The daughter then confessed to the crime, revealing the location of her husband's body, and repeatedly expressed uncertainty about what to do next. Following her mother's advice, Susan reached out to lawyer Neil Davis the next day and confessed to killing her husband and attempting to cover up the crime. After gathering all the details, the experienced defense attorney considered possible scenarios and contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office on January 19th. Davis reported Susan's confession, including the burial of her husband's body in their backyard, and stated that she was willing to provide a full statement at the police station. On January 24, 2003, Susan voluntarily went to the police station, intent on making a full confession. However, her account was disjointed, with confusing details and occasional contradictions. She sometimes referred to her late husband as if he were still alive, expressed fear of him, and requested protection. Consequently, Susan underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The results revealed she had suffered a nervous breakdown and was experiencing depression. Despite this, the evaluation found that Susan was still capable of understanding the actions she had taken. When investigators uncovered the remains of Jeffrey from the makeshift grave in the backyard, they were shocked by the brutality of the scene, having never encountered. Experts counted a total of 193 knife wounds on the victim's body, distributed across various areas, including the groin, legs, shoulders, arms, abdominal area, chest, neck, and face. The majority of these wounds were superficial, meaning they were not life-threatening on their own. However, one head wound was severe enough to have caused death. The large number of superficial wounds suggests that the victim endured a prolonged and agonizing death, likely while still conscious, as his wife repeatedly stabbed him with a small knife. The victim's wrists and ankles showed deep marks from the ties and belt used to bind him. These injuries indicated that the victim had attempted to free himself but was unsuccessful. The ties and belt were still on the body when it was found. Additionally, there were traces of candle wax on the victim's chest and groin area. Susan claimed that the candle wax was an accident, resulting from her husband knocking over a lit candle. However, the prosecution argued that the hot wax was more likely used as a form of torture to inflict suffering on the bound victim. Furthermore, the victim's mouth contained his wife's underwear, which acted as a gag to prevent him from screaming or calling for help. Toxicological tests showed the deceased had alcohol and several controlled substances in his system, which could have led to aggressive and irrational behavior. Initially, the bedroom where the confrontation occurred seemed normal, except for a large bleach stain on the carpet. However, upon closer inspection using special chemical agents and equipment, it became clear that Susan had spent considerable time cleaning up the scene. Once wiped away blood traces were revealed, the true extent of the violence became apparent. Blood was found throughout the room, including on the ceiling, and the mattress was saturated with it. The trial began in late February 2004, with Susan having already spent a year in custody. Her children were being cared for by her parents and sister Cindy. Her lawyer was well prepared, having worked extensively with Susan to build her case. During the trial, Susan frequently broke down in tears as she recounted the events of that horrific night and the abuse she suffered leading up to it. She claimed to have endured years of cruelty and violence at the hands of her husband. The defendant, Susan, claimed that on the evening of the incident, her husband returned home from training in an agitated state. He began demonstrating boxing techniques to their 5-year-old son, Bradley, and said the boy would also take up boxing. When Bradley refused, his father hit him in the face. Susan put the children to bed and then tried to have a serious talk with her husband, urging him to seek help at a clinic. However, he became angry, grabbed his keys, and tried to leave. Susan attempted to stop him, which led to a struggle that caused injuries to her palms and wrists. According to Susan, her husband then struck her, causing her to fall and momentarily lose her bearings. After regaining composure, Susan saw her husband Jeffrey holding a knife, but her testimony became inconsistent. Her lawyer argued she was in a state of affect, leading her to seize the knife and strike Jeffrey. Susan claimed she secured him to a cart with ties and a belt after the confrontation, and candle wax accidentally landed on his body. However, the defendant had no explanation for why her underwear was found in the victim's mouth. In contrast, the prosecution presented a more convincing and logical case. Expert testimony revealed that the victim's wrist and ankle wounds were inflicted before death, likely as part of a ruse to restrain the victim. This also provided a plausible explanation for the gag in the victim's mouth. Additionally, the angle of the injuries suggested that the perpetrator was positioned on top of the victim, rather than struggling with him, which would have resulted in different injury patterns. All the cuts on the victim were inflicted from the front, indicating that the attack occurred while he was lying on his back, unable to move. It was unclear whether Susan had planned her husband's murder in advance and intentionally used the pit he dug for a fountain as a makeshift grave. Prosecutors, however, suspected that she had carefully orchestrated the crime, motivated by the potential insurance payout. The case drew widespread media attention, with Susan being labeled the blue-eyed butcher or blonde meat grinder by the press. Jeffrey's family demanded the harshest possible sentence, while many of their neighbors felt sorry for Susan, recalling instances where she had bruises that she attributed to her own clumsiness, but which may have been signs of physical abuse. Prosecutors initially sought a life sentence for Susan, but later reduced their request to 45 years in prison. In March 2004, she was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years. She showed no emotion when the judge delivered the verdict, appearing detached from the proceedings. A year later, her lawyer's attempt to appeal the decision was rejected. In 2008, Susan and her defense team filed another appeal, which was influenced by new testimony from a previously unknown witness. Misty McKell, wife of former NFL champion Steve McKell, was a key witness. She had a lengthy relationship with Jeffrey Wright in the mid-1990s and was briefly engaged to him. However, she suffered physical abuse, humiliation, and cruel treatment from Jeffrey, leading her to end the engagement and cut ties. Following this new information in Jeffrey's testimony, Susan's prison sentence was reduced to 20 years. She became eligible for parole in 2014 at age 38 but was denied. A second denial followed in July 2017. After 16 years in prison, Susan Wright was released in the winter of 2020 at age 44. She was met by reporters and photographers, causing her to break down in tears and ask to be left alone. Her trial received extensive media coverage, including a broadcast on Court TV. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nadine Lott. Nadine Lott was born in the late 1980s in Arlo, a town on Ireland's southeastern coast. She was the eldest child of Claire and David Lott. She has 3 younger siblings, Phoebe, Tanith, and Kayla. By the summer of 2012, Nadine, 26 years old, had grown into a charismatic woman. She was eagerly planning a trip to Australia, looking forward to a vacation filled with exciting experiences, sports, and new friendships. Nadine stood out from her peers with her bright smile and charming personality, which drew people to her. She had a large social circle and could easily connect with anyone. However, beneath her outgoing exterior, Nadine was a sensitive and vulnerable person who always tried to see the best in others. She cherished her family, who had loved and supported her throughout her childhood. Nadine discovered a passion for photography, capturing life's fleeting moments to preserve the world's beauty. This hobby eventually turned into a career, and she became a successful beautician, helping others enhance their natural beauty. Nadine experienced some difficulties in her personal life. She wasn't eager to settle into a serious relationship, preferring to enjoy her independence and spend time with friends. This desire for freedom led her to take a trip to Australia, where she was attracted by the warm climate, stunning beaches, and exotic landscapes, finding everything fresh and romantic. Nadine met Daniel Murtaugh in Australia, and it was as if they were polar opposites. While Nadine was outgoing and lively, Daniel was quiet and reserved, with piercing eyes and a toned physique that immediately caught her attention. Despite their differences, they felt an instant and inexplicable connection, sharing common interests and a deep sense of intimacy. As they spent more time together, their days were filled with unforgettable experiences and memories. They strolled along stunning beaches, explored the crystal-clear waters, and shared their deepest dreams and secrets. Nadine was captivated by Daniel's surfing skills, and he was drawn to her carefree spirit, genuine nature, and infectious laughter. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, unencumbered by any barriers or reservations. Daniel, a few years Nadine's senior, hailed from Dayan, a suburb of Dublin, where he worked as a window fitter and lived with his family. Nadine viewed it as a casual fling without any serious commitments. Phoebe was the first to discover Daniel. Shortly after, Claire, the mother, learned about the relationship from her child. Claire quickly suspected that this relationship may not be long-lasting. Nadine's life changed dramatically when she found out she was pregnant with Daniel's baby. A few months later, Daniel attempted to rekindle their relationship and start a family, but it ultimately didn't work out. In November 2013, Nadine gave birth to a baby girl named Kia, but Daniel was noticeably absent during this significant moment. Instead, her sister Phoebe was the one who offered emotional support and remained a constant companion. Phoebe was by Nadine's side during childbirth, took the first photo of mother and daughter, and played a vital role in helping Nadine navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Nadine's pregnancy marked a turning point in her life, as she transitioned into her new role as a mother. Despite the difficulties she faced, Nadine found solace in Phoebe's unwavering support and love. Nadine's story is a poignant reminder of the complexities of love and relationships. Although her relationship with Daniel was unfulfilling and lacked deep emotional connection, Nadine was determined to provide a stable and loving environment for her daughter. But Daniel failed to take responsibility for his actions and showed no interest in being a devoted father, leaving Nadine to raise Kia on her own. Nadine had always tried to provide the best life for her daughter, Kia. In 2016, she wanted to build a home with her loved ones, so she rented a house where everyone could live together as a family. However, her hopes were crushed when Daniel, Kia's father, failed to move in with them. This realization marked the end of Nadine's. Daniel's constant absence and broken promises had left her emotionally drained, so she made the decision to end their relationship and start a new chapter in her life. Despite their separation, Nadine had held on to the hope that Kia would still be able to maintain a relationship with her father. Claire, Nadine's mother, had a more realistic view of Daniel's. His love for boxing was a higher priority for him than his family. In contrast, Nadine remained devoted to her daughter Kia, providing her with the love, care, and support she required. As Kia grew up without her father, she had her mother as a role model, teaching her to persevere through challenges. In October 2019, Claire suggested that Nadine celebrate her birthday in Rome. During the trip, Nadine's daughter, Kia, also referred to as Nine, confided in her mother about the struggles she was facing in her life. Nadine had moved on from her relationship with Daniel and was thriving as a single mother. She enjoyed her job, took pride in her accomplishments, and was happy with her life. Her future looked promising, especially after being offered a modeling job. Her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that Daniel continued to make unfulfilled promises to visit their daughter Kia in Ireland. When Daniel requested a meeting to give Nadine money for Kia, she was skeptical, suspecting that he just wanted to see her, not their daughter. She agreed to his request, but only because she didn't want Kia to think poorly of him. Nadine still held on to the hope of creating a real family, despite the increasing impossibility of it. To shield Kia from disappointment and pain, Nadine made excuses for her father's absence. She wanted to protect her daughter from Daniel's irresponsibility and neglect. Meanwhile, Daniel was reluctant to let Nadine go and was fearful that she might start dating other men. As a result, Nadine felt forced to keep her personal life hidden from him to avoid his controlling behavior and threats. In 2019, Nadine Lott's life drastically changed after she ended her relationship with her partner, Daniel. She started dating a new partner from Turkey, but her attempts to keep this relationship private were unsuccessful. Daniel discovered Nadine's new partner and became furious, sparking a series of stalking incidents that caused her immense distress. On December 5th, Nadine sent a clear message to Daniel, stating that their relationship was over and demanding that he stop harassing her. She believed this would finally bring an end to the toxic relationship. However, on December 13th, Nadine asked Daniel to watch their child, Kia, while she attended her aunt's birthday celebration at a local pub. Daniel agreed to watch Kia at his home in Condon, a different location from where Nadine lived, which was in Wicklow. On the night of December 14th, Daniel repeatedly tried to contact Nadine, calling her at 5:57 and 1:26 a.m., but she didn't answer. He eventually sent her a message, asking her to return home soon. Nadine returned home and changed her clothes, but the events that followed are unclear. What is known is that Daniel attacked Nadine, terrifying her 6-year-old daughter, Kia. The noise and screams caught the attention of a neighbor, Ila Klanovich, who investigated the source of the commotion. Ila saw Nadine lying on the floor in her hallway with Daniel standing over her, his face contorted with rage and panic. Horrified, Ila retreated to her apartment and quickly contacted Nadine's family. When Claire, mother of Nadine's, heard Ila's story, she felt overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Daniel fled the scene in his Volvo, leaving behind a trail of dust and blood. When Claire rushed into Nadine's apartment, she was met with a disturbing sight: The walls and broken glass were covered in blood splatters, reflecting the horrific events that had unfolded. But the situation was far from over. It was now 9:50 a.m. Claire, Phoebe, and Kyle walked into the kitchen and were shocked by what they saw. Nadine's body was lying on the floor, brutally mutilated and showing no signs of life. Meanwhile, about 20 miles away in the town of Lahr, Daniel lost control of his car and crashed into a ditch. Miraculously, he escaped with only minor scratches. John Beck-Ken stumbled upon the wreckage and was shocked by the scene: a car with broken headlights, shattered glass, and a lone vehicle lying in a ditch. His initial thought was that the driver had been drinking after a Christmas party, but as he approached the car, he was surprised to find it empty. Suddenly, Daniel emerged from the fog, his eyes vacant, his body shaking, and his clothes covered in blood. Daniel confessed to the crime in a despairing tone to a witness. He was then taken to the hospital in an ambulance, repeatedly muttering that he loved Nadine, as if seeking forgiveness. Meanwhile, Nadine's apartment was in disarray. When paramedics and police officers arrived, they were met with a strong smell of blood. The walls and furniture were smeared with it, and the scene was chaotic. Paramedic Ian Clark was struck by the extent of the destruction. Broken dishes, shattered glass, and bloody footprints indicated that a violent crime had occurred. Phoebe and Kyle rushed Nadine to urgent care after a severe accident, where medical professionals were able to save her life despite her critical injuries, which had left her unconscious. Nadine was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, where she was admitted to the intensive care unit. Doctors documented severe injuries to her head, neck, and chest at 10:58 a.m. Her condition was critical, with 64 injuries found on her body, the cause of which was unclear. Nadine received multiple blood transfusions, but her condition remained critical. Claire hoped that Nadine would recover. Claire stayed by her daughter Nadine's side in the hospital, bringing comfort with familiar items from home like family photos, Nadine's favorite perfumes, and cherished toys. Despite the doctor's bleak outlook, Claire was resolute in her support, believing that her love and care would help Nadine navigate the challenging road to recovery. Meanwhile, Daniel was scheduled to appear in court on December 16th. The court decided to hold him in custody until his trial. On the same day, Claire accompanied Nadine to a follow-up examination to assess the damage to her brain. Claire prayed that Nadine would find the strength to pull through. Tragically, Nadine's injuries were too severe, and she passed away on December 17th, between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m., without ever regaining consciousness. Irish Police Colonel Dean McCarthy described the violent crime as one of the most brutal he had ever witnessed. After the murder, Chief State Pathologist Dr. Linda Mogan performed the autopsy at the city funeral home on December 18th. Following the autopsy, the victim's loved ones, particularly her family, were left with many unanswered questions. Claire was consumed by her thoughts, trying to make sense of the events that had transpired. The next day, the killer, Daniel, confessed to the heinous crime, describing how he attacked and brutally murdered Nadine. According to Daniel's account, he started by grabbing Nadine, hitting her on the head, and then repeatedly punching her with his fists. Despite her efforts to resist, Daniel continued the assault, kicking her and eventually stabbing and strangling her with a charger cord. Kia, a witness to the horrific attack, pleaded with her father to stop the assault, but her cries were ignored. Despite Nadine's desperate attempts to fight back, Daniel had remarkable physical strength and was impossible to defeat. A funeral service for Nadine was held on December 22nd at St. Mary and Peter's Church in Arlo, her hometown. The ceremony drew over 1,000 mourners, and hundreds more watched the live broadcast as they gathered to bid their final farewells. 6 people carefully carried the coffin containing Nadine, a young and beautiful girl, as if she were asleep in eternal rest. The altar was surrounded by scarlet velvet roses. Nadine's mother, Claire, sat in the front row, struggling to hold back tears as she gazed at her daughter's coffin. Her eyes shone with love and admiration for she who lay before her. Family and friends gathered nearby, overcome with grief, as they clutched handkerchiefs to their faces and openly wept. David Lott, Nadine's father, stepped forward, his voice shaking with sorrow, and tearfully placed one of Nadine's elegant handbags beside the coffin. Nadine had a remarkable ability to turn anything into a stunning fashion accessory that perfectly matched her one-of-a-kind style. Next, Kyle, a close family friend, approached the altar, holding a photograph of Nadine and Kia, beaming with happiness as they hugged each other. Kia, confused and grief-stricken, clung to her mother's side, unable to comprehend the loss she had suffered. Phoebe, Nadine's sister, brought a pair of shoes to the altar, the very ones Nadine had been planning to wear to her prom. Overwhelmed with emotion, Phoebe struggled to hold back her tears. Tanith, another close friend, carefully placed a photo album on the altar, filled with cherished memories of Nadine's carefree days, joyful parties, and radiant smile. These memories would remain with them forever, a poignant reminder of the happy times they had shared with Nadine. With genuine empathy on his face, Priest Michael Moore led the ceremony with heartfelt words of eternal life and hope that soothed the grieving family and friends. Looking directly at Kia, he voiced gratitude for the immense joy she had brought Nadine during her life, wishing that Kia's own life ahead be one rich with care, protection, and enduring love. He reassured Kia that her mother's loved ones would always be there to protect her from harm, serving as her guardian angels. Nadine's sisters, Phoebe and Tanith, tearfully bid their final farewell, overcome with grief at the loss of their beloved sister. The ceremony concluded with the playing of funeral music, after which Nadine's coffin was laid to rest in the San Gabriel Cemetery. As her loved ones said their final goodbyes, they took comfort in knowing that Nadine's soul was at peace. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Marie Carlson. In 1974, a baby girl named Marie was born in the Philippines to an ordinary family. Concerned about her daughter's future, Marie's mother made the difficult decision to send her to the United States, where she believed Marie would have better opportunities for success. As a result, Marie was placed in a foster family with a military background, where she met a young girl named Esther, who was the same age as her. Two young girls quickly became close friends, unaware of a surprising fact that linked them together. What Marie didn't know was that her American foster father was actually her biological parent, making Esther her biological sister. As they grew older, the sisters left their parents' house and decided to start a new life together. They chose to settle in Florida, where they rented a cozy apartment near a karaoke club that soon became their favorite hangout spot. Marie Carlson's life was a vibrant reflection of her favorite color, pink. She had always believed that living a beautiful life was essential, surrounding herself with flowers and lovely things. But everything changed when she met Jeff, and she discovered a new, profound meaning in life: love. They quickly fell for each other, got married, and had a daughter named Paris, a name that symbolized the love and beauty they shared. Despite their happy family life, Jeff remained an enigma. His past and last name were shrouded in mystery. Meanwhile, Marie was driven to succeed in her career. She had set her sights on joining the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and was studying criminal law to achieve her goal. However, her journey was not without its challenges. As she progressed in her career, the obstacles grew tougher, and despite her best efforts, Marie ultimately left the police service without realizing her dream. Marie's life took a devastating turn due to a mental health disorder that worsened over time. The trauma of being sexually abused as a child left her with deep emotional scars. As a result, her daily life became increasingly painful, and her relationship with her husband, Jeff, began to suffer. The love they once shared started to fade, and their marriage eventually ended in divorce. The divorce was a difficult but necessary decision, as both Marie and Jeff knew they needed to prioritize their daughter, Paris. They agreed that it would be best for Paris to live with Jeff, allowing her to escape the negativity that had been affecting their home. Despite the challenges, they completed the necessary paperwork amicably and with minimal drama. Throughout the long and difficult divorce process, Marie and Jeff remained dedicated to making decisions that would benefit and care for their daughter, Paris. They remained on good terms and continued to care for each other as friends. Marie was grateful for Jeff's support and made it a priority to spend quality time with Paris, never missing a birthday. Marie had faced many challenges, but she remained determined and refused to surrender. Despite her struggles, she never lost hope. One day, she discovered what had been missing in her life: faith. This newfound faith led her to the Emerald Coast Church, founded by the charismatic pastor James Flanders and his wife Tanya. From the moment she stepped into the church, Marie felt a sense of belonging. The warm and welcoming atmosphere, combined with Pastor James Flanders' sincere and heartfelt sermons, made her feel at home. Marie began the process of recovering and healing from her past experiences, working to make amends and move forward. The Flanders, known for their kindness and generosity, had created a sanctuary where people could find help and support. For Marie, the church became more than just a place of worship. It was a loving community that accepted her with open arms. As she surrounded herself with the church's loving atmosphere, Marie began to heal and grow. With each passing day, Marie felt a sense of freedom and joy that she had never known before. She was no longer the lost and broken person she once was. Instead, she was a strong and vibrant individual, filled with hope and happiness. As she looked out at the sunny Florida landscape, Marie's eyes shone with a newfound radiance, reflecting the beauty and joy that had blossomed in her soul. The church was more than just a building, it was a community of people who genuinely cared for one another. For Marie, this small community became a second family, filled with love, light, and faith. From the outside, the church appeared ordinary, but inside, it felt like a warm and welcoming home. The people gathered there were united by their shared faith, and time seemed to stand still as they came together. Marie, however, was hiding a secret. She was pregnant, and the weight of this secret was crushing her. She felt ashamed and fearful, and only a few close people knew the truth. In June 2021, at the age of 37, Marie gave birth to her second daughter, Grace. As the news spread through the quiet town, people began to wonder who the father of the child was. The truth was painful. The father was a man Marie had been dating briefly, but he had turned out to be abusive and hurtful. When Marie became pregnant, he disappeared without a word. Left alone and broken, Marie found solace in the church. The Flanders family and the local community showed Marie and her newborn daughter overwhelming kindness and acceptance. They provided a safe and nurturing environment, filling a vital need in Marie's life by becoming like a substitute family. Through their selfless support, Marie was able to find the courage, optimism, and start the healing process from the trauma of her past. Marie had been feeling trapped in her life, and just 3 months after giving birth to her daughter, she made a shocking decision that left everyone stunned. She posted a mysterious message on social media announcing that she was leaving, not just her city, but also her family and friends behind. Marie had been secretly planning her escape, careful not to reveal her intentions to anyone, fearing they would try to talk her out of it. She only hinted at her dreams and expressed her love for her loved ones, making it clear that she was leaving for good. Her departure left many questions unanswered. Where was she going? What path would she take? And would she achieve her dreams? Marie's loved ones were devastated, worried sick about her safety and unsure of what to do next. The uncertainty surrounding her disappearance only added to their anxiety. Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, was particularly frantic and decided to contact the police to help find her. As the days passed, the worry and fear for Marie's fate only intensified. Marie's sudden disappearance from Fort Walton Beach had barely stopped making headlines when a disturbing revelation emerged. She had left behind her 3-month-old daughter. This news sparked immediate concern from Marie's sister, Esther, who knew her siblings' devotion to her children. "This is out of character for her," Esther said, her voice shaking. "She's always been extremely protective of her kids." Those who knew Marie were shocked by her disappearance. As a mother, she had always been exemplary, particularly with her 7-year-old daughter, Paris. Marie's ex-husband, Jeff, was especially stunned when he learned that she had stopped visiting Paris, as they had been inseparable. Now, at 37, Marie had vanished without a trace. While she had the right to start anew, the police couldn't ignore the fact that she had left her young child behind. The police analyzed Marie's recent messages and discovered a peculiar aspect: her writing style had changed significantly from before. This led them to suspect that she might be under duress or that the messages were fabricated. An investigation was launched, which soon impacted Marie's personal life. Questions arose about the identity of her daughter Grace's father and the nature of their relationship with Marie. However, even Marie's sister Esther was unable to confirm or deny these suspicions. The police were faced with a complex web of secrets surrounding Marie's disappearance, including the mysterious messages and the uncertainty about Grace's father. In an effort to clarify the situation, the police spoke with Tanya and James Flanders. They revealed that Marie had a history of disappearing temporarily without explanation. The Flanders also shared that Marie had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which could have contributed to her erratic behavior. A few weeks before she vanished, Marie experienced a severe episode of depression. She began taking medication but was forced to stop due to her pregnancy. Feeling extremely unwell, Marie asked the Flanders family to care for her daughter while she rested. After lunch, Marie lay down to rest, and Tanya and Grace went out shopping. James stayed with Marie to keep an eye on her, but he left for a short time to go home. When he returned, he was shocked to find that Marie and her car were nowhere to be found. The Flanders family immediately launched a search for Marie. They scoured the streets, checking the parking lots of every building, but found no sign of her. Then, James had an idea to check the airport, and to their astonishment, they found Marie's car parked there. Using the spare keys, James drove the car back home. When investigators examined the car, they did not find any suspicious marks or evidence that could lead to Marie's whereabouts. The investigators returned to the airport, hoping to find new leads. Their plan was to review the parking lot camera footage, as the airport is required to keep this information on file. They also hoped to find Marie's ticket, which might have her fingerprints on it. However, when they found the ticket, it didn't yield any useful results. The ticket was clean, with no fingerprints or other clues that could aid in the investigation. A search of Marie's car also turned up nothing, and the parking ticket didn't contain any fingerprints. To make matters worse, the cameras in the parking lot weren't working on the day Marie disappeared. This lack of footage was a significant setback for the investigation, leaving the question of whether Marie's disappearance was a tragic accident or a carefully planned escape. As the investigation continued, the police began to suspect that Marie's disappearance might be more sinister than initially thought. They reclassified the case as a murder investigation and shifted their focus to the mysterious father of Marie's child, Grace. The police returned to the church, hoping to find some answers to their questions. Who was Grace's father, and what role did he play in Marie's disappearance? The church, where Marie had found solace, was filled with rumors and speculation. Parishioners whispered about Marie's secret and the plan that had been weighing on her mind. Marie had been struggling with depression and had considered an abortion, but the Flanders family, who were eager to expand their family, had strongly opposed this idea. The Flanders asked Marie to leave her baby with them, while hypocritically offering to help her. Unbeknownst to others, they desperately wanted a second child, despite both being over 40. One parishioner claimed that Marie's baby, Grace, was a reward from above for the Flanders' good deeds. The situation took a turn when Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, arrived on the scene. He was not the father of the child but had information that could solve the mystery. Jeff revealed that he had noticed Marie's pregnancy and had questioned her about the father. Marie lied, saying she was a surrogate mother for the Flanders. However, the investigation that followed revealed the truth. Police spoke with Tanya's friends, who were also church members, and eventually, the truth came to light. It turned out that the father of the child was James, and the conception was natural. This meant that James's wife, Tanya, had to silently accept the situation. The revelation caught the investigators' attention, and the Flanders were summoned for questioning once again. Tanya was the only one who showed up for questioning. She confirmed the information and added that she was present when the child was conceived. According to her, everything happened with the mutual consent of all parties involved. After Marie disappeared, disturbing details about her relationship with James and Tanya came to light. It turned out that James was intimately involved with both women, which was not just infidelity but a form of polygamy. At one point, they even celebrated the child's birthday together, taking a photo of James, Tanya, and Marie posing as a happy family. However, this photo was meant to mislead, suggesting that the celebration was only for Tanya and that Marie was not involved. But after questioning Tanya's friends, the investigation uncovered new information that revealed the true nature of their relationship. Although Tanya claimed that Marie was initially happy with the arrangement, it became clear that this was no longer the case at some point. Marie's feelings for her daughter Grace were stirred after she was born, and she became hesitant to give her up to Tanya. According to friends, Marie's reservations fueled her jealousy of Tanya, sparking suspicion that Marie might not want to surrender her child to her rival and planned to steal James away from her. These rumors swiftly elevated Tanya to the top of the suspect list. Following Marie's disappearance, all Tanya's problems would essentially dissolve, granting her the opportunity to raise Grace solo and retain her status as James's beloved wife. However, 2 months had passed since Marie vanished, yet no leads emerged. Investigators diligently attempted to unravel the mysteries surrounding Marie's disappearance using available tools, including GPS data. Despite its limitations in 2011, investigators focused on analyzing phone records and message logs to gather more information. The records revealed that Marie had accompanied James to the airport, but Tanya was absent. This development coincided with the unexpected visit of Jason, a young priest who often represented James and ultimately chose to share information with investigators. Jason shared with others a conversation he had unintentionally overheard after Marie vanished. James expressed his distress and concern, stating that he would have to leave the country due to Marie's disappearance, but he couldn't disclose the details. He only mentioned that something terrible had occurred during Marie's severe depression. Prior to her disappearance, James had stayed with Marie at a clinic for a few days, while Jason temporarily took his place. Meanwhile, rumors about polygamy began circulating among the church parishioners, which shocked Jason when he discovered them. Upon James' return from the hospital, Jason decided to discuss the matter with him. Jason asked James about his relationship with Marie. James was honest and admitted to having a romantic relationship with both Marie and his wife. He revealed that he and Marie had a heated argument before her disappearance, which escalated into a physical fight. However, James insisted that Marie was alive and well at the time of her disappearance. Following their conversation, James decided to resign as pastor and soon left the city with his family, including Tanya and Grace, to move to Arizona. Shortly before their departure, Marie's family had contacted the Flanders family to collect some of Marie's belongings. As a result, investigators obtained Marie's phone, which may have contained crucial information. The investigation into Marie's disappearance was initially hindered because most of the data on James' phone had been deleted. However, investigators were able to recover some fragments, including a video of James promoting precious metals. This finding raised suspicions, particularly since the case took place in 2011, when digital evidence was easier to erase and surveillance was less widespread. At that time, DNA detection technologies were still in their infancy, making it seem like criminals could easily escape punishment. However, the field of digital forensics was also advancing, and it was this expertise that ultimately helped crack the case. 3 years after Marie vanished, a new program became available that enabled investigators to recover data from phones and computers. This technology allowed them to access messages between Marie and James, which painted a disturbing picture of their relationship. The recovered messages included explicit images, some of which were taken inside a church. Perhaps most damningly, Marie's emails to James revealed her deep desire to leave Fort Walton Beach, fearing the place was cursed. Her messages hinted at her desperation to escape with her child. A chain of unexpected and dramatic events led to the Flanders family's deepest secrets being exposed. Flanders said, "When someone spreads rumors or harms me, I want them to cease to exist." Given James' situation, shrouded in darkness and fear, it's possible he fulfilled this ominous promise. Despite the lack of Marie's body, there was sufficient evidence to issue an arrest warrant for James on charges of second-degree murder. However, the prosecutor faced a significant challenge, convincing the jury of James' guilt without the victim's body. James and his lawyer were in a desperate situation with an uncertain future ahead, so they made a drastic decision as a last resort to try and turn things around. If James revealed Marie's body's location, he would be charged with manslaughter, a crime with a more moderate sentence. After years of anguish, Marie's family agreed to this deal. James's words revealed a disturbing truth. He and Marie had a tumultuous relationship, frequently arguing about her struggles with depression. During one heated argument, Marie physically lashed out at James, and in an attempt to calm her down, he inadvertently knocked her to the ground. Tragically, she lost her life. In the aftermath, James was overcome with guilt and regret. He had unknowingly contributed to Marie's death, and his attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. The investigators eventually discovered Marie's body in the yard of James's house, buried 5 feet underground and wrapped in a blanket. The discovery was a shock to everyone involved, as they had been searching for her for years. The consequences of James's actions were severe. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 11 years. His wife, Tanya, claimed to have been unaware of James's crime and was deeply shocked by the news of Marie's death. Marie's body was discovered after a delay, which hindered experts from determining the cause of her death. This delayed discovery may have impacted the direction of the investigation. 5 years later, Marie's family and friends were finally able to lay her to rest and find closure at her funeral. Her sister Esther might have even sung a final song in her honor. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Menhez Simon. Menhez Simon, a Canadian with a promising future. However, instead of attending York University to study mechanical engineering, he chose to deceive his parents and live a lie. As the expected graduation date drew near, maintaining this double life became increasingly difficult, severely impacting his mental state. This ultimately led to the tragic outcome of him murdering his entire family. In an attempt to gain attention, Menhez posted photos of his crime on his Discord channel. Initially, many believed it was a joke, but it soon became clear that the photos were genuine. Discord's anonymous features allowed Menhez to hide his true identity, making it challenging for users to uncover his real name, age, and location. In Bangladesh, a country plagued by poverty and overpopulation, many sought a better life abroad. Monarez, born in 1971, felt an insatiable desire to improve his circumstances. Despite the country's rapid development, Monarez yearned for more. He met and married Maltesi, born in India, and they shared a dream of building a better future together in Toronto, Canada. After 2 years of preparation, Monarez and Maltesi made the move to Toronto. They settled into their new life and eventually started a family. 6 years after their arrival, they welcomed a son, Maltesi, followed by a daughter, Mesa, 2 years later. Maltesi and her husband Monarez were loving and dedicated parents who worked tirelessly to ensure their family's well-being and happiness. Maltesi was particularly close to their children and was known for her kindness and generosity. She spent a lot of time caring for her family and was always willing to lend a helping hand. In her community, Maltesi was a respected and well-liked figure, both in her neighborhood and among fellow Bangladeshi immigrants. Monarez was a more reserved person, but he was also highly respected in the community. He was a devout Muslim who prioritized his family's well-being above all else. As a taxi driver, Monarez was very familiar with the city of Toronto, thanks to his many years of experience. His dedication to his job earned him numerous awards, including being named the Best Employee of the Month and one of the top taxi drivers in his company. Both Maltesi and Monarez had high aspirations for their children, Melissa and Maltesi. Having successfully navigated the challenges of moving to a big city themselves, they expected their children to achieve great things. They dreamed of their children securing high-paying, prestigious jobs that would bring them comfort and prosperity. After relocating from poor conditions, Monarez and Maltesi were determined to provide their children with every opportunity to succeed. They worked hard to achieve their aspirations, which led to gradual but steady success. The family's first major milestone was buying a modest house on Mowan Road in Scarborough. With careful financial planning, they then acquired 2 investment properties, one in Scarborough and another in nearby Danforth. Maltesi took charge of managing the properties, and over time, the family's wealth grew steadily. As the family's assets increased, Maltesi felt a greater sense of responsibility towards her 2 children and their 3 properties. To help with the workload, Maltesi's mother, Firoza Begum, moved from India to join the family. This allowed Maltesi to strike a better balance between her work and personal life. In 2006, the family upgraded to a larger 4-bedroom house in Markham. At the time, it was widely believed that a career in medicine or engineering was the key to success. Monarez and Maltesi wanted their children to pursue these fields, with Maltesi aspiring to become a neurosurgeon and Maltesi aiming to become an engineer. However, their children had different plans. Melissa, in particular, was a rebellious child who resisted her parents' views and often pushed them away, despite showing great potential. Melissa frequently ran away from home, drank excessively, and used illicit substances, leading to reckless behavior. This behavior prompted strict and sometimes questionable intervention from her parents. If she failed to return home on time, she would be forced to spend the night outside. However, her mother, Maltesi, would occasionally unlock the back door to allow her to enter. The conflicts between Melissa and her father often escalated, drawing the attention of the police. In contrast, Maltesi had a distinctly different personality. He was often described as shy and introverted, but he shared a warm and loving relationship with his mother. Maltesi was extremely devoted to her son, often giving in to his wishes and catering to his needs. She would drive him wherever he needed to go, cook his meals, keep his room tidy, and greet him after school with a home-cooked meal. As the eldest son, Maltesi faced pressure from his parents to succeed and meet their high expectations. To cope with this pressure, he found solace in the world of video games, particularly massively multiplayer online, MMO, games like Perfect World. In this virtual world, Menhez could express himself freely and connect with people worldwide, overcoming his shyness and self-doubt. The game became a refuge for him, and he spent most of his free time immersed in it. Menhez's life was quite routine. Apart from accompanying his father to the mosque, he spent most of his time in his room, playing online games with his friends. However, his life took a significant turn after he graduated from high school. He thrilled his parents with the news that he had been accepted into the mechanical engineering program at York University. Initially, this achievement brought immense joy to his parents, Monaraz and Momatas. However, it also intensified the pressure on Menhez, as he was now expected to excel and had no room for error. As a result, he became even more introverted and immersed himself in the online world. Menhez started playing an updated version of the Perfect World game, which involved a group of players and a set of rules. He used the social network Discord to stay in touch with his friends and fellow players. The game's atmosphere was generally friendly, and players often formed close bonds with one another. In fact, many of them remained in contact even outside of the game. Menhez felt more at ease expressing himself in the virtual world of the game than he did in real life, where the atmosphere was often tense. As a result, he found solace in the game, using it as an escape from the stresses of reality. In contrast, Melissa acted out her frustrations in the real world, frequently clashing with her parents over various issues. Her rebellious behavior eventually led to an arrest for shoplifting, although she was fortunate to have the charges dropped in exchange for community service. After leaving home to live with her boyfriend, the tension in the household did not dissipate. Instead, it seemed to intensify, putting even more pressure on Menhez to find ways to cope. As a result, he became even more deeply immersed in the game, using it as a means of escaping the increasingly unbearable reality at home. As Melissa broke free from her parents' expectations, they began to pin their hopes on her son, Menhez, as the family's savior. They boasted about his engineering career at York University, but this turned out to be a fabrication. In reality, Menhez attended Seneca Community College, a less prestigious institution. Menhez struggled academically, felt isolated, and abandoned his faith, which deeply disappointed his devout parents. He often expressed frustration about his parents' constant interference in his life, which affected his personal relationships. Menhez met a girl online, which infuriated his parents and further fueled his resentment. However, he found a sense of independence through the online game Perfect World, where he connected with friends in a community on Discord. Initially, Menhez performed well in school, but his grades began to slip as his gaming obsession spiraled out of control. Menhez's excessive gaming habits started to take a toll on his academic performance. He began skipping classes and struggled to keep up with his studies, resulting in him having to retake several subjects. Eventually, he lost interest in studying altogether and stopped attending classes, opting to focus solely on gaming instead. To avoid arousing his parents' suspicions, Menhez would leave home every day pretending to go to York University. He wasn't actually attending classes. Instead, he would spend his days playing games at a cafe on his laptop, working out at the gym, and then returning to gaming until late at night. In online conversations with his gaming friends, Menhez would occasionally joke about leaving the group and make cryptic comments about potentially going to prison. However, these statements were not taken seriously by his online friends, as they were familiar with his tendency to make humorous remarks. Additionally, Menhez often made jokes about sensitive topics such as homophobia and religion, but since it was a gaming community, no one took his comments seriously. Menhez's sense of humor took a darker and more aggressive turn over time. He started making jokes that were intentionally provocative, trying to elicit a reaction from others in the community. However, his attempts at humor were so off-putting that they led to multiple complaints. Ultimately, the community administrators banned him due to his behavior. Menhez became more and more isolated. In contrast, Melissa turned her life around, repaired her relationship with her parents, and even gained admission to York University. From the outside, the family appeared happy and successful, with new beginnings and a promising future. As Minhas realized he was about to lose his privileged status as the golden child, he committed a horrific crime on July 27, 2019, just one day before his expected graduation ceremony. On that day, the family was preoccupied with their daily routines. Minhas' mother and grandmother went about their usual schedule, attending a daybreak event, unaware of the impending tragedy. Minhas began to carry out his horrific plan by sneaking into his mother's bedroom. He struck her on the head with a crowbar, knocking her unconscious, and then slit her throat to ensure she was dead. He repeated this brutal act with his grandmother. After committing these heinous crimes, Minhas calmly returned to his room and opened Discord, where he sent a disturbing photo of his mother's mutilated body next to the crowbar. The recipients of the photo were initially unsure if it was a joke, as Minhas was known for his dark humor. However, the image was extremely realistic and did not appear to be a prank. Minhas was a well-known figure in the perfect world gaming community, but his behavior had always been unsettling, earning him a negative reputation among many players. The situation took a disturbing turn when Minhas posted two photos that seemed to show a murder scene. The images were extremely realistic and did not seem to be a joke. Minhas then made a chilling post claiming that he had killed his mother and grandmother and was waiting for his sister and father to return home so he could do the same to them. As the situation worsened and became more intense, other gamers began to take Minhas seriously, fearing that his threats could lead to more deaths. Discord users were convinced that they were witnessing a series of crimes unfold in real time, but felt powerless to intervene. Desperate to prevent further harm, players tried to uncover Minhas' identity, but he had hidden his personal information, leaving no clues about his name, age, or whereabouts. In an effort to gather more information, users reached out to Minhas' friend, Junior, asking him to share any details he might know. When Junior confronted Minhas about the disturbing images, Minhas revealed that his threats were genuine and that he planned to kill his father and sister soon. Meanwhile, Melissa returned home to an eerily quiet house. Unbeknownst to her, Minhas was waiting inside. As she entered the house, he attacked her with a crowbar, striking her on the head, and then slit her throat. After committing the crime, Minhas took a photo of Melissa's body and sent it to his friend John via private message. Minhas posted a photo with a disturbing message, claiming that he had struggled with his sister Melissa for 10 minutes, during which she cried and screamed. In a private message to John, Minhas expressed extreme self-loathing, stating that his parents would be ashamed of him and that he was a coward and subhuman. Minhas then sent John several more photos, including one of the murder weapon and a selfie with a bloody knife. John was horrified and shared these photos with the rest of the group, confirming that Minhas had indeed committed a third murder. Group members quickly saved the photos as evidence against Minhas. Meanwhile, Minhas continued to act normally, waiting for his father to return home. When his father, Monaras, entered the garage, Minhas ambushed him, stabbing him in the neck, just like his other victims. Minhas took a photo of the victim, which the group was unable to prevent. In a shocking turn of events, Minhas shared a disturbing message with online friends, stating, "I consider myself a coward and a loser. As an atheist, I don't believe in an afterlife, so I feared death and wanted others to die instead, sparing them suffering. I realize now how pathetic and selfish I've been." What followed was even more alarming. Minhas told another online friend that he had murdered his entire family and was prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison. He then invited this friend to view photos of the crime scene. However, the story takes a crucial turn. One of the online friends discovered a way to obtain Minhas' IP address, which could reveal his location. With this information, the group was able to track Minhas to his home in Toronto. A user from Minnesota, who was part of the online conversation, contacted their local police department, which in turn alerted the Toronto police to Menhez's location. The police began their investigation after receiving information from an anonymous source. Meanwhile, Menhez was still active online, chatting with users who were inquiring about his next steps. He claimed he would try new things, including drinking, smoking, and reconnecting with an ex-girlfriend. However, it was only a matter of time before the police caught up with him. They were able to track his IP address, contacted his internet service provider, and obtained his physical address. Surprisingly, Menhez did not take steps to cover his digital tracks, despite being an avid gamer and computer user. Just 12 hours after the crime, officers arrived at the Menhez residence. As they looked up, they saw Menhez looking out of his bedroom window. At this point, the police had limited information and evidence, relying mostly on tips from online users. They were uncertain about the accuracy of the reports. But Menhez unexpectedly made the police's job easier. After posting a farewell message on Discord, announcing that the police had arrived, he voluntarily went downstairs, opened the door, and surrendered to the authorities. When questioned by the police, Menhez responded that this was his family's home and that they would discover the truth for themselves. The bodies of Manaras and Melissa were the first to be found, followed by Momotaz and Firoza, near the entrance to the house. Menhez was immediately arrested by the police on suspicion of murder. He was then taken to the local police station for further questioning. During the interrogation, Menhez displayed unusual calmness, showing no visible emotion. The lack of emotional response was notable, as if he was discussing an inconsequential event. He was ultimately charged with 4 counts of murder, 3 first-degree murders and 1 second-degree murder. In court, the evidence strongly indicated his guilt. The Perfect World gaming community had preserved a record of all his online messages, which served as evidence against him, confirming his culpability to a great extent. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jorge Cortez. Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was born on January 5, 1978, in Mexico City. He kept his childhood and teenage years private, only sharing that he often clashed with his mother, who cared deeply for him, and his father, who rarely intervened in their arguments. Jorge's strained family relationships likely contributed to his emotional isolation and the development of his aggressive and unstable personality. To escape his difficult home life, Jorge left at a young age and embarked on a journey across Mexico, taking on temporary jobs to support himself. He worked as a waiter in various bars in Mexico City, including those in the Rosa and Cona districts, and also relied on tips from tourists in the popular Villa du and Cuac districts, known for their extensive infrastructure and diverse entertainment options. Jorge's life of crime began in this place. In 2010, he was arrested for theft and given a 4-year prison sentence. However, because it was his first offense, the judge decided to release him on bail. At the time, no one suspected that this decision would set free a man who would later become one of Mexico's most notorious criminals. After his release, Jorge met a girl named Adriana and fell in love. Initially, he treated her with kindness and attention, but as their relationship deepened, his behavior became increasingly violent. Adriana soon found herself a victim of his physical abuse. Exhausted by his cruelty, she decided to end the relationship, but Jorge refused to accept her decision. One night, Jorge violently attacked Adriana, dragging her down the stairs by her hair and breaking her nose. He beat her so severely that she lost consciousness. When she came to, she saw Jorge holding a lighter and threatening to kill them both if she didn't stay with him. Despite his threats, Adriana continued to resist, which further enraged Jorge. He attempted to strangle her by grabbing her neck with both hands. However, Adriana managed to break free, grabbed a hammer, and began fighting back. She was able to force Jorge out of the apartment and ultimately out of her life for good. This violent confrontation occurred in 2011, and although Adriana reported the incident to the police, Jorge was released on bail and avoided punishment. In hindsight, Adriana's escape from Jorge that night saved her from a potentially deadly situation. Jorge would go on to take the lives of multiple women in the future. After meeting Jorge, 18-year-old Yang Kiang Marie became his new victim. Yang was a Korean girl who was very close to her mother, Monica, and her sisters, particularly Anna. Anna was a lively and athletic young woman who balanced her studies in psychology with a part-time job at a restaurant. Yang met Jorge at one of the bars where he worked, and they were immediately drawn to each other. After a brief courtship, they started dating, but their relationship was marked by violence. Despite their frequent arguments, they stayed together. When Yang turned 19, she decided to declare her independence from her family and move to the city with Jorge. However, this change only made their problems worse. Jorge's behavior became increasingly controlling and abusive. He constantly monitored Yang's activities, calling her every hour at work and restricting her interactions with friends. As a result, Yang felt trapped and realized she was a victim of domestic violence. However, she hid the truth from others, including her family, to avoid causing them concern. Only a few close people, including her sister Anna and some friends, knew about the situation. Despite her family's warnings and advice to leave Jorge, Yang struggled to break free. She attempted to leave him multiple times but always returned, held back by her own fears and vulnerabilities. During this time, Yang underwent a significant transformation, changing from a happy and lively person to someone who was depressed and willing to do anything to please Jorge. The relationship continued to deteriorate, becoming increasingly toxic and damaging to Yang's well-being. Yang's relationship with Jorge was marked by violent outbursts. On one occasion, Jorge refused to let Yang into their apartment when she came home late. On another, he locked her inside, set her clothes on fire, and chased her around the room in a fit of rage. In August 2014, their arguments escalated, and Yang decided to leave Jorge and move in with her parents. A friend encouraged her to report Jorge to the police and end the abuse. Although Yang initially agreed, she eventually returned to Jorge and they continued living together. Tragically, Yang's life was cut short. On September 21st, her body was discovered in their apartment, bearing signs of severe bruising. Jorge claimed to have found Yang hanging in the bedroom, stating that he had left her sleeping at noon the previous day, September 20th, after she had worked a shift at the bar. Jorge claimed that he returned home on the morning of September 21st to find Yang deceased. He immediately contacted the police and notified Yang's family of the tragic event. The news of Yang's death was devastating to her family, prompting Monica and Anna to rush to the scene. Upon arrival, they found police officers and forensic experts already at the apartment, carefully removing Yang's body from the bed. Jorge stated that when he saw his deceased wife, he became frantic and attempted to assist her. A police officer explained to the family that an investigation was ongoing and they needed to stay outside the house to protect potential evidence. As they watched, Yang's body, covered with a sheet, was carried out of the house. The police also informed them that the initial evidence suggested Yang's death was a suicide, a conclusion supported by the position of the body in Jorge's account, which the police believed to be truthful. However, Yang's family was skeptical and struggled to accept this explanation, finding it hard to believe that she would take her own life. When the family arrived to identify the body and prepare the necessary documents, they were surprised to find that the examination protocol was almost complete. The death certificate stated that Yang had died from strangulation by hanging. However, when the relatives were allowed to view the body, they noticed bruises on Yang's legs that seemed suspicious. Jorge attempted to explain the bruises by saying that the body had slipped from his hands and fallen to the floor when he tried to move it from the bed. Monica was not convinced by Jorge's explanation and suspected that something was not quite right. Investigations revealed more about Yang's tumultuous relationship with Jorge, fueling suspicion that her death might not be the suicide police claimed. During police testimony, friends described constant fighting between they, revealing Jorge's history of jealousy and aggression. His behavior extended to frequent phone calls to Yang's workplace, indicating a pattern of controlling behavior. Yang's sister Anna noted that a few months before the tragedy, her behavior dramatically shifted. Anna added that she started distancing herself from the family once the relationship with Jorge started. This prompted concern within the family. Despite growing concerns about Jorge's unstable behavior and doubts about the official explanation, the police were quick to dismiss theories and rush to close the case. Experts at the Katok morgue recommended cremating Yang's body, which meant that further forensic investigation would not be possible. Yang's mother was deeply suspicious of Jorge's involvement in her daughter's death, but she eventually agreed to the cremation due to pressure from her family, thereby giving up the chance to gather evidence to support her suspicions. Jorge did not attend the funeral, but he got a tattoo of a broken heart, supposedly to show his grief. However, he also cut off all contact with Yang's family. Yang's death had a devastating impact on her family, especially her mother, Monica. The overwhelming pain of losing her daughter, combined with feelings of loneliness and despair, led Monica to develop an addiction to alcohol and smoking. Monica was devastated when her daughter Yang passed away suddenly. Despite her overwhelming grief, Monica refused to accept the initial explanation of Yang's death, finding it contradictory to her daughter's outgoing and life-loving nature. Unsettled by details like the bruises on Yang's body and the lack of evidence supporting the claimed manner of death, Monica's instincts told her there was more to the story. To get answers, Monica launched her own investigation into the case. Monica acquired security footage from her daughter's home, revealing her son-in-law Jorge was the last person to see Yang alive. With the help of a private attorney and forensic pathologist, Monica reviewed Yang's final days. An unexpected development led to a shocking explanation, revealing a deeply seated scandal and a misclassified homicide. Monica's determination uncovered hidden details, ultimately revealing the truth behind Yang's death. The detective completely rejected the initial account of Yang's death, presenting conclusive evidence that proved she was murdered. Further investigation revealed several discrepancies with the original autopsy. There were no signs of hanging on Yang's body, but her neck showed signs of strangulation, and a scarf had been used to make it appear as though she had hanged herself. Bruises on her hands and fingernails suggested she had tried to fight back. The medical examiner confirmed that any competent expert would have reached the same conclusion. This raises serious questions. Why did the police ignore these facts, and why did the family receive a false report about their daughter's death? Monica's relentless pursuit of truth led her to conduct a 7-month investigation, uncovering a series of disturbing failures and incompetence by law enforcement agencies. Her research revealed that Yang had previously reported violence by Jorge to the police, but her cries for help were ignored. Monica also discovered that Jorge had ties to his father and the staff handling the case, which, combined with the severity of Yang's injuries and the apparent negligence of the authorities, compelled her to take decisive action. Monica appealed to the prosecutor's office, seeking a review of the case and justice for Jorge, the main suspect. However, she was met with neglect and cynicism instead of support. A prosecutor even questioned her competence, suggesting she should focus on being a housewife and seek psychological help rather than pursuing justice. Undeterred, Monica continued her investigation, driven by her love for her child and her desire for truth. Her perseverance ultimately paid off. Jorge committed another murder in 2016, a devastating end to Yang's story. This event began a new chapter in Campira's life. She met Jorge online, where he hid his dark nature behind a charming facade. Unaware of his past, She was drawn to his friendly, sociable personality, and they soon developed a romantic relationship. Campira's close friends discovered her new relationship when she posted a photo of herself and her boyfriend on social media, beaming with happiness. For several weeks, their romance seemed perfect. As 2016 drew to a close, Campira's mother, Margarita, met Jorge for the first time on December 28. Campira, Jorge, and her children then traveled to Acapulco to spend the New Year's holidays with her parents. However, Jorge later convinced Campira to extend their stay, and she asked her mother to watch the children for a few more days. Margarita agreed, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. 3 days later, Campira was found dead. The last time Margarita had spoken to her daughter was on December 30th. When Margarita tried to call Campira on New Year's Eve, she was met with silence. Campira always answered her phone or returned calls promptly, so Margarita's anxiety grew with each passing minute. As the hours ticked by, Campira's unusual silence and lack of online activity only heightened Margarita's concerns. Eventually, Margarita decided to contact Jorge to find out what had happened to her daughter. Jorge attempted to alleviate Margarita's concerns by downplaying the argument and Campira's departure to celebrate the new year with friends. However, Margarita remained unconvinced and asked a family friend to check on Campira. When the friend arrived at Campira's house, Jorge told him that Campira was asleep and unable to meet with him. Margarita's suspicions grew, and she sensed that Jorge was hiding something. On December 31st, between 5 o'clock and 8 p.m., Jorge committed a heinous crime. He brutally murdered Campira by strangling her after beating her severely with an unknown object, leaving multiple injuries on her face and body. In an attempt to make it appear as though Campira had taken her own life, Jorge cut a lock of her hair, placed her body on the bed, covered it with a blanket, and left the gas stove on. He even placed a portrait of Campira's late ex-husband in her hand to create the illusion that memories of him had driven her to suicide. Around 8:30 p.m., Jorge packed his belongings and left the house. On the night of January 1, 2017, Margarita tried to contact her daughter Campira to wish her a happy new year, but was unable to reach her. She then called her son Gabriel, who was in the same city as Campira, and asked him to check on her. When Gabriel arrived at his sister's house, he was immediately hit with a strong smell of gas. After turning off the gas burners, he began searching for Campira and was shocked to find her body on the couch, bearing signs of a brutal beating on her face. As Gabriel threw off the blanket covering his sister's body, he was horrified by what he saw. Campira was wearing only her underwear, and her body was covered in numerous bruises. Several details caught his attention. There were drops of blood around her, although her body in underwear appeared clean, as if she had recently bathed. Additionally, Campira's head was almost completely shaved, which struck Gabriel as strange, as his sister was known to take great care of her hair. Gabriel reported the incident to the police and then called his mother to break the news to Margarita. Paramedics and police arrived, confirmed Campira's death, and restricted access to the scene. The family was stunned by grief, struggling to come to terms with what happened. Their eyes reflected sadness and a glimmer of hope for justice. The investigation was complicated by inconsistencies between the crime scene and the initial assumption of suicide. The police meticulously examined every detail to unravel the truth. The police initially suspected suicide, but Campira's family disputed this, finding it impossible to believe that a young, cheerful woman would take such a drastic step. Campira's family was convinced that her death was not a suicide, but a violent crime. A strand of hair found on her body that did not match anyone in the house reinforced their suspicions. They demanded a more thorough investigation, which was granted. A second forensic examination confirmed their fears, revealing that Campira was strangled and that the suicide scene was staged. The evidence included marks on her trachea and neck, bruises indicating a beating, and the absence of a strand of hair. The police launched an investigation, and Campira's aunt, Sandra, worked with the deputy prosecutor to have the case transferred to the prosecutor's office. However, progress was slow. Later, Sandra was called back to the prosecutor's office and informed that she and her brother, Gabriel, could be plaintiffs in the case. Campira's children were left with their grandmother after the tragedy. To shield them from painful memories, they were transferred to a new school. However, time alone didn't heal their wounds. 2 months later, the family was allowed to visit the apartment where Campira's body was found, collecting her belongings and possibly uncovering clues. Her laptop was found, but its data had been deleted. Fortunately, her iPad was password protected, and the last photos she took before her death were recovered. One disturbing photo showed Campira lying next to Jorge on the same sofa where her body was later found. Further investigation of the photos revealed more evidence. In one image, Jorge was seen holding a skull-shaped container that was later discovered in the apartment's freezer. He was also shown strangling Campira with one hand. Drawers in the desk yielded sketches of tattoos Jorge planned to get, further hinting at his possible involvement in the crime. The public was outraged when Jorge was released on bail in 2009, sparking widespread anger. Many realized that if he had been detained earlier, the young women might still be alive. The Campira and Young families continued to demand justice for their loved ones on social media, gathering over 13,000 supporters on a memorial page. 10 months after his escape, Jorge was finally caught on October 24, 2017. His arrest was unexpected, occurring during a routine patrol by the National Civilian Police in Livingston, Guatemala. The officers were patrolling the streets when they noticed a suspicious man who appeared to be homeless. A routine check of his documents and fingerprints revealed a shocking truth: the man was on the international wanted list with a high danger level. Jorge was immediately arrested and taken to the immigration center in Guatemala City, where he was detained pending further action. The Guatemalan authorities quickly contacted their Mexican counterparts to initiate the extradition process. According to the head of the Guatemalan police, Pablo Castillo, Jorge had been hiding under a bridge in western Guatemala, living on the streets and relying on the kindness of tourists for survival. The next day, October 25, Jorge was transported to the Mexican border city of Chicas, where he was handed over to the Mexican authorities. After crossing the border, Jorge was taken to Mexico City, marking the successful completion of the extradition process and the delivery of justice. Jorge appeared in court to face charges for his alleged crimes. A reporter managed to ask him a few questions, but Jorge responded with a complete denial of any wrongdoing, claiming he was unaware of the charges against him. This was despite being taken to court on October 26 for a preventive measure, specifically for the murder of Campira. During the trial, the prosecution presented strong evidence of Jorge's involvement in the crime. The investigation revealed that Jorge had brutally beaten the victim with an unknown object before strangling her to death. The prosecutor classified the crime as a feminicide, made worse by the fact that Jorge had a romantic relationship with the victim. The prosecutor also pointed out that Jorge had a prior conviction for theft and was possibly involved in the death of another ex-girlfriend, Jan. Despite the overwhelming evidence and arguments against Jorge, his lawyer proposed an alternative explanation that Jorge was mentally unstable and needed a psychological evaluation. This move came as the community awaited justice, expecting a suitable punishment for the perpetrator. After thoroughly examining the evidence, witness testimonies, and arguments, the judge turned his attention to Jorge and his lawyer. He asked how long it would take to complete the psychological evaluation. Following a consultation, Jorge's lawyer agreed that Jorge would attend all subsequent court hearings. Upon reviewing all materials and considering both sides, the judge rendered a verdict: there was sufficient evidence from the prosecutor to hold Jorge accountable for his crimes. The court ordered the investigation to continue and gave a 4-month deadline to gather new evidence. Meanwhile, Jorge was taken into custody and held at a pre-trial detention center. Despite Jorge's arrest and guilty verdict, the Campira and Jan families faced a lengthy and challenging process ahead. In August 2019, an oral hearing was held in Jorge's case. His lawyer asked the court to disregard the videos that showed Jorge entering and leaving Campira's house on the day she was murdered. They claimed that these videos were incomplete, taken from a 30-hour recording at the crime scene, and could not be used to prove Jorge's guilt. The videos had been given to the victim's family by a neighbor who recorded them. The family then passed them on to the police, who brought only partial recordings to court. The police had lost the original disc. Jorge's lawyer alleged that the Mexico City prosecutor's office had concealed this information, which only came to light on the day of the hearing. The defense lawyer argued that the materials used to obtain the arrest warrant were unlawful. Specifically, the lawyer claimed that a key video was given to the Campira family rather than the judicial authorities, and therefore could not be used as evidence. Despite this, the supervisory judge rejected the defense's petition after considering the prosecution's arguments and the testimony of Campira's friends and neighbors. Additionally, the court considered 2 witness statements, but did not accept them as evidence. The case proceeded, and Jorge was allowed to appeal the decision and present the same arguments again. Meanwhile, the Young family was dealing with their own separate case. A ban on violence against women was established in Mexico City, thanks in part to advocacy from several groups, including the Mexican Institute of Human Rights and Democracy and the Center for Justice. This new decree was influenced by multiple high-profile crimes, including the murder of Jan. As a result, her case was forwarded to a Mexico City court for trial. Nearly 7 years after Yang's murder, charges were formally brought against her suspected killer, Jorge, in May 2021. Shortly thereafter, a judge ordered his arrest for his role in her murder. Despite these developments, Jorge's defense team was able to significantly slow down the investigation and prosecution. 9 years after Yang's death, Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was sentenced to 52 years and 6 months in prison in November 2023 for taking Yang's life. While the Young family has finally received justice, Campira's family still faces a lengthy process. A trial had been scheduled for April 2022 at the detention center where Jorge was being held. Activists were resolute that this time the perpetrator would not evade accountability. Jorge's lawyers have successfully delayed the hearing once again, which was set to take place on January 29, 2024. Over 50 witnesses were expected to be called to testify, but for now, there is no update on the status of the hearing in the media. Jorge's family remains hopeful that he will eventually be held accountable for his actions. While nothing can bring Campira back, they seek justice and want to ensure that her death does not go unpunished. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jenna Oakley. Jenna Oakley was born on March 2, 2001, in Indiana. She lived with her mother and 2-year-old brother in a troubled home. Due to her mother's neglect and inability to provide a stable life, Jenna often found herself left alone from a young age. The situation worsened over time, leading to intervention from Child Protective Services in April 2016. As a result, Jenna and her brother were removed from their mother's care and relocated to live with Philip Oakley, who their father and his wife, Rhonda, who was 52 years old at the time. Rhonda welcomed the children into her home and accepted them as her own. Philip later revealed that Rhonda had been eager to be a good mother to her stepchildren from the start. She welcomed them into her home with open arms and worked to create a safe and comfortable environment for them. Jenna was a difficult child to manage. Despite her academic success, which earned her praise from her teachers, she struggled to follow the rules in her new home. Her behavior became an even greater concern when her parents discovered her relationship with a 20-year-old man named Kenneth, whom she had met at the age of 10 while living with her mother in Indiana. Kenneth was a mysterious figure who seemed to be both a supportive influence and a hindrance in Jenna's life. To better understand the events that unfolded, it's essential to delve into Rhonda's story and explore the complexities of her personality, as well as the significant impact she had on Jenna's life. Rhonda Oakley was born on March 5, 1964, in Casey County, Kentucky, to parents Howard Lee Raines and Mabel Walls Raines. She graduated from Casey County High School in 1982 and went on to work for 30 years in a prominent company that specialized in marketing, packaging, and printing services. Rhonda was a kind, loving, and cheerful person who was highly respected by her friends, who admired her warmth and kindness towards others. Rhonda met Philip Oakley on a golf course, and they fell deeply in love. They decided to get married and start a new life together. However, their relationship was not without its challenges. At the time, Rhonda was divorced and had 4 children from her previous marriage. Philip and Rhonda's family were initially against their relationship due to their significant age difference. They asked Philip to end the relationship, which led to frequent arguments within the family. For that reason, Philip believed the relationship of Kenneth and Jenna was unacceptable because Kenneth was 5 years older than his daughter, Jenna. Philip even threatened to involve the police if Kenneth continued to date Jenna. To maintain control of the situation, Philip and Rhonda took measures such as confiscating Jenna's phone and computer and enforcing strict rules. The situation at home became so unbearable for she that she finally confided in her father and stepmother, promising to end her relationship with Kenneth. However, she failed to keep this promise and continued to secretly meet with him. As a result, her relationship with her parents deteriorated, and she began to harbor a deep-seated hatred towards her parents. On September 1, 2016, at around 4 p.m., David, her younger brother, returned home from school and entered the house. As he walked into the kitchen, he was startled by the sound of 3 of their dogs barking frantically in the basement. Curious, David rushed downstairs to investigate and found his mother, Rhonda, lying motionless on the floor. Panicked, David immediately ran outside to seek help and eventually went to a neighbor's house to call the police. When the emergency services arrived, they were unable to revive Rhonda, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. The police found deep cuts on her neck, indicating a brutal attack. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, but upon further investigation, they discovered that nothing in the house had been stolen or disturbed. The investigation into Rhonda's death began, and her family and friends were left wondering who could have committed such a heinous crime. As the investigation progressed, several key pieces of evidence came to light. Rhonda's car was discovered to be missing, and a trash can in the kitchen was found to contain vomit. Furthermore, one of the large meat cleavers from the kitchen was found to be missing, leading investigators to suspect that it may have been the weapon used to attack Rhonda. When Philip returned home, he was questioned by detectives and informed them that his daughter, Jenna, had not attended school that day. In fact, Jenna had been unreachable since the incident, and her teachers had called Philip early in the morning to report her absence. This led the police to believe that Jenna may have been kidnapped by the same individuals who killed Rhonda, and that she may be in danger. During the questioning, detectives asked Philip if he knew of anyone who might have wanted to harm Rhonda or the family. Philip revealed that his daughter's boyfriend, Kenneth, had a troubled relationship with Jenna, and that it had deteriorated significantly. Philip admitted that he had threatened to contact the police if Kenneth did not stop seeing Jenna. Philip suspected that his daughter had been dishonest with him and that she and Kenneth had never intended to break up or follow the rules. It was possible that Kenneth had planned to get rid of the source of his problems and take Jenna with him. After learning this, the police focused their efforts on finding Kenneth. They discovered that on August 31st, the day before the incident, Kenneth had flown from Indiana to Lexington, Kentucky, at 3 a.m. From there, he took a taxi to Oakley's house. Another crucial piece of evidence came from a store manager in Denver, who claimed to have seen Jenna with a young man on September 1st. The manager handed over surveillance footage to the police, which showed Jenna and Kenneth entering the store and then leaving together to get into a car that looked like Rhonda's stolen vehicle. Notably, Jenna appeared calm and normal in the footage, not showing any signs of distress or being coerced. Her behavior led investigators to dismiss the possibility that she was being held against her will and raised suspicions that she might be involved in a crime against her stepmother. A search of Jenna's room later revealed a diary that confirmed these suspicions. The diary exposed a deep-seated hatred that her family seemed to be unaware of. Jenna wrote about her ongoing feelings for Kenneth, with whom she had maintained contact despite promising to stay away. Interspersed with these entries were expressions of resentment towards her family members, which grew increasingly disturbing over time. Jenna wrote in her diary that she intended to kill her father, stepmother, and brother to prevent them from ever separating her from Kenneth again, allowing her to be with him without interference. She outlined a specific plan and timeline to carry out these actions. When her father, Philip, read her words, he was overcome with shock and fainted. He struggled to comprehend that his daughter would not only conceive of such a heinous act, but also possessed the determination to make it a reality. Jenna had a plan to kill her family members. First, she intended to kill her father between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m. by luring him to the basement and stabbing him in the neck. Her next target was Rhonda, whom she planned to kill in her bedroom between 6 o'clock and 8 a.m. using the same knife. After that, she planned to kill her brother David in his room. The police discovered Jenna's diary at the start of their investigation, which became the primary evidence against her. Meanwhile, Philip gave the police Kenneth's phone number, allowing them to track and apprehend Kenneth and his girlfriend. On September 4th, 3 days after the crime, investigators located the fugitives in Tucumcari, New Mexico. The police informed local authorities about the case, who quickly located Rhonda's stolen car near a hotel where Kenneth and Jenna were staying. They were arrested and transported separately to a New Mexico detention center, awaiting extradition. However, a search of the car did not yield the weapon used in the attack on Rhonda. Kenneth chose not to face trial. He attempted to take his own life in his cell by hanging himself and wrote a letter. Officers found him and rushed him to the hospital, where he was in critical condition. In his letter, Kenneth claimed responsibility for the crime and stated that he and Jenna acted according to his plan, attempting to take the blame to absolve her. The authorities kept Kenneth's attempt on his own life and his confession from Jenna for a time, deciding it was best she didn't know while being transported to Kentucky. They wanted her to give her own testimony without being influenced by Kenneth's actions. Upon arriving in Kentucky, Jenna also confessed to the crime, providing the police with a detailed account of her actions. According to Jenna, on the day before the crime, Kenneth visited her at her house. They met early in the morning, which is why Jenna didn't attend school that day. They spent the entire day together. Rhonda arrived home around 3 p.m. and encountered Kenneth in the basement. This encounter sparked an argument between Rhonda and Jenna, which eventually turned violent. The violence escalated to the point where Jenna attempted to strangle Rhonda by grabbing her neck. Kenneth then intervened, taking over from Jenna. He grasped Rhonda's throat with such force that she soon lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Once Rhonda was unconscious, Jenna took a kitchen knife and inflicted fatal wounds on her neck, leading to her death. Witnessing the scene caused Kenneth to become ill, and he vomited into a trash can. When questioned by the police about the knife used in the crime, Jenna stated that she and Kenneth had disposed of it during their escape. They had wrapped the knife in a bag and thrown it away at a fast food restaurant. Jenna provided this testimony while Kenneth was still in serious condition at the hospital. He was charged with first-degree murder but was unable to stand trial due to his self-inflicted injuries. After 6 weeks on life support, he passed away. In October 2019, Jenna was formally charged with her stepmother's death. The charges alleged she either caused the death or collaborated with someone else. She also faced a theft charge. Jenna was held without bail at a juvenile detention center. Her father, Philip, stated he didn't care that she was his daughter and felt she didn't deserve his protection after the incident. He hoped Jenna would receive the punishment she deserved. Jenna wasn't informed of Kenneth's death until a court hearing, where she fainted upon learning the news. After regaining consciousness, she screamed, cried, and struggled to calm down. In January 2019, Jenna pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter and expressed regret for her actions in court the following month. She expressed remorse for the pain, anger, and disappointment she caused. Upon learning of the plea deal, Philip expressed disappointment, stating that the system failed to prevent the crime against his wife. He claimed there were warning signs that Jenna was in trouble, but no one took action. Philip added that people often advise going to the police immediately, which he and his wife did, yet they still found themselves in a terrible situation. At the sentencing hearing in March, Susan Hooper, a mitigation specialist for the defense, explained that the defendant suffered from abuse, violence, neglect, and lack of basic human rights throughout her life. The lawyer questioned what could have driven a 15-year-old with no history of violence to commit such a crime. The lawyer noted that Jenna had no prior record, was respected by teachers and peers, and it was unclear what led her to take such a desperate step. It was also noted that none of Jenna's family attended the hearing. Philip declined to participate, and Jenna's mother never appeared in court to learn her daughter's fate. This was unusual, as parents typically show interest in the case's progress, even in difficult cases where the accused has committed serious crimes. The lawyer, Susan, gathered extensive evidence and records showing that Jenna was abandoned by her mother, Christ, who neglected her well-being. Susan conducted an in-depth examination of Jenna's early life by reviewing child care and medical records in Indiana and Kent. She also interviewed various individuals who knew Jenna, including neighbors, family friends, caregivers, teachers, school counselors, and her older half-sister. The sister's testimony was particularly relevant, as she had lived with Jenna for several years. According to the sister, they never had a stable or safe home environment. After Christ's divorce from Philip, she started working at a local Indiana prison, where she became romantically involved with an inmate. She eventually posted bail for him, and he moved into their home. This marked the beginning of a nightmare for Jenna, who was only 3 years old at the time. The man consistently robbed them and brought other women into the house, all while Jenna and her brother were present. A neighbor contacted Child Services after discovering that Jenna's family home was infested with rats and that the young children were being left alone all day. When a social worker visited the home, she encountered a hostile mother who refused to let her inside. Upon eventually gaining entry, the social worker was met with a horrific scene. The house was filled with rotting food, piles of trash, rat droppings, and human waste. The kitchen was overrun with unwashed dishes, covered in mold and infested with rodents and insects, including a large number of cockroaches and fleas. The children were living in deplorable conditions, with no regard for their safety. They had unrestricted access to medications and other hazardous substances, further endangering their well-being. Despite efforts to improve their situation, relocating Jenna and her younger brother to live with their father in Kentucky did not alleviate their problems. Susan stated that Philip and Rhonda neglected them, forcing Jenna to sleep in an unclean basement. However, the lawyer countered that Jenna had simply moved from one unstable home to another. Prosecutor Richie Borms presented evidence during the hearing, demonstrating that Philip made every effort to provide for the children's needs and create a good home. Despite the defense attorney's claims, Borms argued that if abuse or neglect had occurred, child care services would have been notified by Jenna's neighbors, friends, or teachers. Furthermore, the prosecutor inquired if the defense attorney was aware of Jenna's relationship with Kenneth and the fact that her parents disapproved of they. The defense attorney stated that Kenneth was the only person who genuinely cared for the accused, Jenna. According to the defense, Jenna's past experiences had left her with unmet emotional needs. She was searching for someone to provide her with the love and care she had always lacked, and having lost that person, she was now devastated. Defense attorney Anthony Lee Taylor presented scientific documents to justify Jenna's behavior. The articles explained how the child abuse Jenna suffered at a young age had negatively impacted her psychological development. Anthony told the court that his conversations with Jenna led him to believe that she lacked parental love and that her strained relationship with her mother contributed to her inappropriate relationship with Kenneth. Jenna supported this statement by reading a letter in which she expressed her deep regret and apologized to her family for her actions. She acknowledged the pain she had caused Rhonda's family and friends and claimed that she had since become a completely different person, distinct from the Jenna who committed the crime. When Philip stepped up to the podium, the atmosphere in the hall became tense. He and his daughter were visibly anxious about the impending conversation. Philip approached Jenna, looked her straight in the eye, and asked what had driven her to commit such a serious offense. He reminded her that as her father, he had always treated her with respect, and that Rhonda had never spoken ill of her or caused her harm. Philip explained that when they took Jenna in, it was to give her a better life, and that Rhonda had cared for her like her own daughter. However, Philip acknowledged that Jenna had been a challenging teenager, and that he and Rhonda had discussed sending her to a specialized institution to help her get back on track. Philip also shared his concerns about Jenna's relationship with Kenneth, describing him as a predator who had taken advantage of his underage daughter. Philip revealed that when he discovered Jenna and Kenneth were still in contact despite being forbidden from doing so, he reported Kenneth to the police and warned him to stay away from Jenna, threatening legal action if necessary. Philip turned to his daughter, visibly shaken. He condemned her crime as unforgivable, citing Rhonda's exceptional character as a wonderful woman and mother, unmatched by anyone. He emphasized how Jenna's actions had devastated not only Rhonda but also others. Philip then questioned why Jenna planned to harm him and her brother, arguing that she was not a victim, but rather someone influenced by circumstance. Despite this, he concluded by reaffirming his love for her, saying that regardless of her actions, she would always be his daughter. Jenna, overwhelmed, burst into tears, shouting at her father that she never felt part of the family and had never experienced his love. Following this outburst, the judge called for a recess to deliberate the verdict. On March 27, 2019, the verdict was announced. Jenna Oakley was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with 10 years for first-degree murder and 5 years for car theft. She would be eligible for parole in 2034. This case served as a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, ultimately prevails, and those who commit heinous crimes will face their due punishment. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Hannah Clark. Hannah Clark was born on September 8, 1988. By 2020, she was a devoted mother of 3 young children, 2 sweet girls, Aaliyah and Liana, and a rambunctious boy named Trey. Hannah's loved ones remember her as a kind and gentle soul with a bright smile that could light up anyone's heart. She was a selfless and caring mother who gave her all to her children. Hannah's family life was marked by her relationship with her ex-husband, Rowan Baxter, a rugby player for the New Zealand Warriors team. Despite their significant age difference, they formed a strong bond, which deepened over time. Sue Clark, Hannah's mother, struggled to accept Rowan, but Hannah refused to listen to her concerns. People close to Rowan shared negative opinions about him. Sue, Hannah's mother, had a nagging feeling that something was off about Rowan. She perceived him as arrogant and self-centered, which made her uneasy. She was also concerned about the significant age gap between Rowan and Hannah. When they first met, Hannah was a recent graduate, while Rowan was 31 years old. Additionally, Rowan's past relationships were a worry for Sue, particularly since he was still in the process of divorcing his previous wife and was living with her at the time. When Hannah introduced Rowan to her parents, they questioned him about his ex-wife. Rowan explained that he was staying with her due to their son. Eventually, Rowan finalized his divorce and continued his relationship with Hannah. In 2011, he proposed to her, and she accepted. They got married in Kingsley, New South Wales, Australia. The following year, they had 3 children together. Hannah and her family, including her father Rowan, were passionate about sports. However, Rowan's muscular physique, developed during his professional athlete days, was partly due to steroid use, which led to mental health issues. As a personal trainer, Hannah's approach differed from her father's. She was loved by her clients for her kindness, empathy, and dedication, earning her a loyal following. Rowan's approach to training was unique, but his behavior was marred by aggression and inappropriateness, likely caused by steroid use. This made him a poor trainer, as clients don't need someone who makes them feel uncomfortable. Rowan struggled to communicate effectively with people, which negatively impacted his career and finances. As a result, his wife Hannah had to become the primary breadwinner, which further irritated Rowan. He felt emasculated by her success, as she was doing a better job than he was. Despite their financial struggles, they decided to open their own fitness club. However, this decision was largely driven by Rowan's desire to control Hannah's every move and monitor her whereabouts. Rowan's behavior in the store mirrored his past actions at the gyms where he worked. He often felt the need to assert superiority over women. During a private training session with Sue's mother, he showed his cruel side, acting inappropriately instead of showing respect. He dropped Sue, causing her to hit her head and bleed, and laughed at her clumsiness, showing no sympathy. Despite this alarming behavior, Hannah's parents tried to accept him for their daughter's sake. Rowan's control over Hannah was all-encompassing, and he isolated her from her family and friends. He dictated who she could see and when, and even forbade the children from visiting their grandmother and Hannah from communicating with her brother, whom he disliked. As a result, Hannah felt trapped and enslaved, confined to the walls of her own home. Rowan's behavior towards Hannah was also emotionally and physically abusive. He would demand intimacy from her, and if she refused, he would become enraged, taking out his anger on her and the children. After forcing himself on her, he would then apologize insincerely, attributing his behavior to a burst of passion. Hannah's life was slowly under the constant control and cruelty of her husband, Rowan. Their marriage, once filled with love and passion, had degenerated into a nightmare of fear and submission. Rowan's tyrannical behavior had created a toxic environment, where Hannah lived in constant terror of his wrath. Rowan's cruelty was not limited to Hannah, he also targeted their children. While some playful exchanges between parents and children are normal, Rowan frequently crossed the line, intentionally hurting and belittling them. When the children cried, he would mock them, showing no empathy or respect for their feelings. For example, a conflict between Rowan and his daughter Aaliyah turned disastrous when Rowan used excessive force, causing Aaliyah to hit her head. The injury was severe enough to require hospitalization and stitches. Instead of taking responsibility and apologizing, Rowan blamed Aaliyah for the incident. This was not an isolated incident, as Rowan had a history of tormenting his children. As an athlete, he would take ice baths after training, but he would also force his children, including his young son Trey, to sit in icy water, disregarding their tears and pleas for mercy. In the same year, Hannah's life took a drastic turn for the worse. Rowan, who had recently become interested in jiu-jitsu, returned home from a training session one day, still pumped up with adrenaline. Without warning, he physically attacked Hannah, grabbing her throat with a tight grip and uttering terrifying words. Consumed by fear, Hannah didn't immediately recognize that she was experiencing domestic violence. However, this incident was far more frightening than anything she had previously endured. As a result, Hannah made up her mind to leave Rowan at the earliest chance. After reaching out to the police, she provided a detailed account of the horrific experience to the officer. The police officer informed Hannah that forcing an intimate relationship without consent is a form of domestic violence. This conversation was a turning point for Hannah, helping her understand the situation and prompting her to take immediate action. She quickly gathered her children and left for her parents' house, trying to escape the abusive situation. Although their divorce was not yet finalized in November 2019, Hannah made the decision to allow Rowan to spend time with their children. However, she was aware that she had no legal authority to control this arrangement without a court's intervention. Even so, Hannah was still uneasy about leaving the children in Rowan's care. To fix his problem, Rowan was struggling to cope with his emotions and sought help from his church's pastor, Christopher. Christopher was a kind and supportive person who was always willing to listen. However, as Rowan began to open up to him, Christopher noticed some disturbing traits. Rowan had a desire for dominance and control, which he occasionally revealed when his confidence faltered. During one of these moments, Rowan confessed to Christopher that he was aware his actions were wrong and wanted to change, but didn't know how. Rowan's admission was a crucial step towards reform, and Christopher's guidance could have been instrumental in helping him. However, before progress could be made, a shocking event occurred. Hannah and her children were walking down the street when Rowan suddenly appeared out of nowhere, grabbed their daughter Lion, and disappeared. Hannah's life was turned upside down by unbearable anxiety and fear for her daughter Lion's safety. For 2 agonizing days, she had no idea where Lion was, and her distress grew by the minute. Hannah turned to the police, who launched a search and eventually found Lion safe and sound with her father. Although Lion was unharmed, the traumatic experience left a lasting impact on Hannah. The police, recognizing the danger that Hannah and her children faced, urged her to file a police report against her ex and obtain a protection order. However, despite the problems her ex, Rowan, had caused, he still had joint custody of the children, which he used to continue manipulating and abusing Hannah. After a meeting with Rowan, the children were returned to Hannah's parents. However, before leaving, Rowan attempted to humiliate Hannah by displaying pictures of her in her underwear on his car, in plain sight of their children. Hannah, enraged, tried to remove the photos, but Rowan responded violently. He grabbed her shoulder, twisted her arm, and punched her in the face, splitting her lip. The attack was only stopped when Hannah's mother, Sue, intervened. As Rowan drove away, he yelled insults. Hannah, traumatized, immediately reported the incident to the police, as it was a clear violation of the protection order. Unfortunately, the authorities were unable to respond in time, which ultimately led to a tragic outcome. It was a typical morning on February 19, 2020. Hannah grabbed her car keys and left her parents' house to drop off her 3 kids at kindergarten. Hannah and her children got into the car, but before they could leave, Rowan jumped in, causing Hannah to become frightened for their safety. She tried to calm Rowan down, but he was furious and began yelling threats and ordering Hannah to start the car and drive away. Hannah carefully drove off, trying not to escalate the situation. As she turned onto Raven Street, the car stopped. In a desperate and vengeful act, Rowan grabbed a canister of gasoline from under the car seat and drenched Hannah and her children with it. Michael ZCK, who happened to be nearby, witnessed the horrific scene. He said that earlier that morning, he had heard a car pull up outside his house. Hannah, frantic and pleading for help, screamed that Rowan was trying to kill her and pouring gasoline all over them. As Hannah begged for mercy, Rowan refused to let her go, his face twisted in a rage. Michael rushed to the car and was met with Rowan's emotionless face, holding a lighter in his hand. In the next moment, the car erupted in flames. The explosion was followed by blood-curdling screams, a deafening ringing, and then an eerie silence. Luckily, Hannah had narrowly escaped the inferno, but was left with severe burns and bleeding. Frantically, she pleaded for assistance, not for her own suffering, but for her children who remained trapped in the blazing car. A car happened to drive by, and a doctor who was not on duty stopped to offer assistance. Seeing Hannah's distress, the doctor rushed to her side. Meanwhile, Michael intervened quickly, grabbing a hose from his house to try and extinguish the flames. However, the fire was too intense, and it engulfed the entire car, leaving no hope of rescuing the children. The doctor and Michael yelled at Hannah to take cover and get away from the fire, but she was too consumed by grief to hear them. With growing desperation, Michael rushed to the car to rescue the children, but the intense flames and scorching heat thwarted his efforts. Hannah lay on the road, her body badly burned, repeatedly begging for someone to save her children. At that moment, no one grasped the full extent of the tragedy. Hannah's body was severely burned, with over 97% of her skin damaged, except for her feet. Despite her excruciating pain, Hannah's thoughts were consumed by her children, who were now left vulnerable and unprotected. Hannah's badly burned body left police doubting her survival chances. Yet, she refused to give up. With fierce determination, she provided a crucial testimony. Police officer Angus Cook carefully recorded every word Hannah spoke as she struggled to recount the events leading up to her tragic situation. With great difficulty, Hannah managed to name her ex-husband, Rowan Baxter, as the person responsible for her ordeal, and provided a detailed account of what had happened. As Hannah's voice grew weaker and her body frail, Officer Angus remained by her side, offering words of encouragement and praise for her bravery. He reassured her that she had already done enough and that everything would be okay. Hannah was on the brink of death, yet she didn't fully grasp the horror unfolding around her. When questioned about whether Rowan had threatened her earlier, she replied that he hadn't. As doctors approached to alleviate her suffering, she lost the ability to speak. Meanwhile, Rowan Baxter's behavior was erratic. Despite suffering severe burns covering 80% of his body, he managed to exit the car unassisted. Rowan sat on the road, staring at the burning vehicle. After a brief moment, he inexplicably climbed back into the car, which was engulfed in flames. A witness, putting their own life at risk, attempted to extinguish the fire at the back of the car. It was then that Rowan retrieved a knife from the vehicle and began to chase people away, preventing them from putting out the flames. The children, trapped in the burning car, had little chance of survival. Nevertheless, bystanders refused to give up their efforts to save them. Rowan refused to let anyone approach the car, claimed them to a horrific death. In a final, selfish act, he stabbed himself with the knife. Despite her own life-threatening injuries, her primary concern was for the health of her children and her desire to reveal the truth. Tragically, Hannah passed away in the hospital on the same day, at the young age of 31. Hannah was a victim of severe domestic violence, which also affected her children. She fought tirelessly to protect her family from their abuser, but sadly, her efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Throughout her daily struggles, Hannah showed immense courage, standing up for her loved ones despite the numerous challenges she faced. For days later, a massive gathering took place to pay tribute to Hannah and her children. A lasting memorial, Hannah's House, was also created in Camp Hill, where a tree planting ceremony was held in her honor, accompanied by a plaque that tells the story of her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Su Xingqi. Tam Xing Fai, a 43 years old faculty member, was noticeably absent from work, sparking concern among his colleagues. On July 4th, a coworker named Ma tried to reach him on his mobile phone at 11 a.m., but there was no answer. Ma wasn't immediately worried, assuming Tam Xing Fai was busy taking care of his family's adopted dog, which had a skin disease and was scheduled to visit the vet. However, when Xing Fai failed to show up for a meeting at the university's finance department on July 5th, Ma's concern grew. He tried calling Xing Fai's mobile phone again, but there was still no answer. Unfortunately, Ma didn't have Xing Fai's landline phone number, so he couldn't try contacting him that way. By July 6th, Xing Fai had been absent from work for 2 days with no communication with his colleagues. One of his co-workers finally reported the situation to the finance department, which prompted Xing Fai's superiors to call his landline phone. Unfortunately, no one answered that call either. The police contacted the library where Helen Tong Yin-yi, the 33-year-old wife of the missing man. Library staff reported that she was also absent from work without prior notice. They, originally from Zhongshan in Guangdong Province, China, had been married for 11 years and had 2 daughters, Hiu Man, 10, and Hiu Ing, 7 years old. Despite their difficult living conditions and financial struggles, the family was known to be kind, happy, and cheerful. They lived in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, but Xing Fai often took his daughters on outings to have fun in town. Their children were well behaved, and the family seemed to be a happy one. Given their circumstances, it was possible that the family had decided to take a vacation together. However, something unexpected must have happened, preventing them from returning. Xing Fai's colleagues repeatedly tried to contact him by phone, hoping for a response. Eventually, someone answered, but to their surprise, it was a middle-aged man with an unfamiliar voice, not a member of the family. A man claiming to be Xing Fai's cousin called his workplace, stating that the family had taken a summer vacation to Guangdong Province in mainland China. He allegedly received Xing Fai's phone for safekeeping, but couldn't provide a return date for the family. However, the call only heightened suspicion among Xing Fai's co-workers. They found it out of character for Xing Fai to suddenly leave without notice, as he was a diligent and organized person. If he planned a vacation, he would have arranged it with his children's school in advance. Moreover, the family was responsible for 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would care for them. Xing Fai's family situation also raised questions. His father, a sailor, had gone missing, and his mother was living in a nursing home due to illness. Xing Fai regularly visited her every week, making it unlikely that he would abandon her to go on vacation. Eventually, the police were called. One of Xing Fai's colleagues accompanied them to his home, an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During the trip, a suspicious person was spotted. A short man was seen from a distance near the Xing Fai family's fence before quickly disappearing. Initially, no attention was paid to this, and they continued on. Upon arrival, they found the gate to Xing Fai's home locked. The police investigated the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covered a large area of approximately 450 square meters, but most of it was empty space, about 350 square meters of flower beds. The construction area was only about 90 square meters, and the building was constructed illegally. The original owner had built several tin houses on the site, using it as a waste recycling facility. A stone house on the opposite side was used as a pig farm, with very few people living in the area. As a result, the police only had one neighbor to question, an elderly woman named Wang who lived alone across the street. Wang claimed to have known the family's schedule and reported that they usually tended to their garden in the afternoon. Su Wang had limited knowledge of the family's personal lives, mainly due to their remote location. She was aware that the family didn't receive many visitors, and the only relative she knew of was Xing Fai's cousin, Su Xingqi. Wang didn't have information about Su Xingqi's address or that of Xing Fai's uncle, who supposedly lived in a nearby stone house. When the police questioned Xing Fai's colleague, they learned that a cousin had answered Xing Fai's phone, leading the police to believe it was Su Xingqi. However, Wang clarified that she didn't know Su Xingqi's address. She did report hearing cries for help from the house on July 5. In response, the police conducted door-to-door inquiries in Pingqi village and eventually tracked down a man matching Wang's description at a stone house on Huaju Road. The man, 42 years old Zhu Shenqi, confirmed that he was Xing Fai's cousin and stated that he occasionally visited the family home to help with renovations and gardening. When questioned about the phone call, Su Xingqi maintained that the family had gone on vacation to China. On July 5, Xing Fai visited his mother at the nursing home and then returned home to inform Su Xingqi that he planned to travel to Danyuan, China for a few days. Due to the high roaming fees, Xing Fai asked Su Xingqi to hold on to his Hong Kong mobile phone until he returned. The person seen fleeing the scene by police and Xing Fai's colleague was actually Su Xingqi, who was leaving after feeding the family dogs. Su Xingqi's behavior and expressions were observed, and he appeared to be telling the truth. His story seemed consistent, and there were no obvious discrepancies. When asked if he had a key to the family home, Su Xingqi denied it. Despite finding Su Xingqi, the police continued their investigation. Going door to door in the village. A local resident reported a stranger borrowed money from a villager, leading to a heated argument. The villager threatened to seek compensation from Xing Fai's family, who were struggling financially due to his mother's hospitalization and existing debts. The villagers initially believed the stranger was not Su Xingqi, but they suspected the family might be hiding to escape their debts. However, when the police inquired about Su Xingqi, the villagers revealed that he had been dishonest. They confirmed that Su Xingqi regularly visited the Xing Fai's home to perform maintenance and repairs, and he was always able to enter the house on his own, even when no one else was present. This information led the police to conclude that Su Xingqi must have had a key or access to the home Xing Fai's. In fact, he did have a key, which Xing Fai had given to him, as witnessed by Wang. When the police asked Su Xingqi for the key, he initially denied owning one, claiming he used a spare key for renovations that he had returned. However, his demeanor had changed, and he was avoiding key details. When the police threatened to search his home, Su Xingqi became agitated and suddenly remembered another house key that he had not returned. He retrieved the key from his dresser and handed it over to the police. Although Su Xingqi's behavior was suspicious, there was no direct evidence linking him to the family's disappearance. As a result, the police placed him under surveillance while continuing their investigation. During their investigation, police used a spare key to enter the home, where they found a scene of disarray and evidence of a ransacking. Fresh blood stains on the walls suggested that a violent incident had occurred on the property. The presence of a sink full of dirty dishes in the kitchen raised suspicions about the family's claim to have traveled to China, as it seemed unlikely they would have left their home in such a state before departing. A search of the master bedroom turned up the family's identification cards in a dresser, which prompted the lead investigator to contact the border crossing office. The office reported that the family had not left Hong Kong. Further investigation of the house uncovered a blood-stained shirt in a side room and a blood-stained plastic water pipe in the corner. Police then deployed sniffer dogs to search for additional evidence and potentially locate the missing family members. The dogs detected a scent and discovered blood stains under recently disturbed soil 9 meters away. Furthermore, despite it being summer vacation, their children, Hiu Man and Hiu Eng, were enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family would not have been on vacation. It became clear that the family had been victims of a crime, so a special team was set up to investigate. Due to the late hour, the police cordoned off the scene, restricted access to Pingqi village. Su Xingqi was confined to home. He was the prime suspect in the case. Su Xingqi promptly confessed. According to Su Xingqi's statement, he was from Huanpu in Guangdong province and typically resided with his sister, wife, and two sons, aged 15 and 16, who suffered from memory issues. Su Xingqi previously earned a living selling motorcycles in Junction City. However, following Guangdong's ban on motorcycles in 2006, sales plummeted. Financial struggles led him to reach out to his cousin, Xing Fai, in Hong Kong, seeking employment opportunities. Xing Fai helped Su Xingqi secure a construction job that provided a daily salary of 500 Hong Kong dollars, including accommodation and meals. After working for half a month, Su Xingqi became dissatisfied with his salary, which was reduced to 220 Hong Kong dollars due to company deductions. He impulsively quit his job and returned to China. However, in 2007, a typhoon damaged his home, and he needed money for repairs. Su Xingqi asked Xing Fai to help him find work in Hong Kong again. When Xing Fai couldn't find him a job, he proposed an alternative arrangement. Xing Fai would pay Su Xingqi from his own salary to help with household chores and repairs at his home. Su Xingqi accepted this offer and began traveling to Hong Kong every other month to work on Xing Fai's home and garden. Su Xingqi claims that he and Tong Yanyi, Xing Fai's wife, began a clandestine romantic relationship. However, Xing Fai discovered their relationship on July 3rd. On July 5th, Su Xingqi accompanied Xing Fai to a nursing home to visit his mother. Su Xingqi snuck out of the nursing home to return home and continue his affair with Yanyi. Unexpectedly, Xing Fai returned home early and, in a fit of rage, physically confronted Su Xingqi. In a state of panic, the man grabbed a 25-centimeter-long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai until he fell to the ground, dead. Overwhelmed by what had just happened, he wanted to turn himself in to the police. However, Su Xingqi refused to let that happen. Since he couldn't change his mind, Su Xingqi decided to kill Xing Fai. Su Xingqi found some wires in the corner of the room, charged at him, knocked him to the ground, and tied his hands behind his back. Su Xingqi then covered Xing Fai's mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over his head. Before this, their two children were in their bedroom watching cartoons. They heard the commotion and their parents warning to run away, but instead, they ran towards their parents and saw their father dead and Su Xingqi in the process of killing their mother. The children ran back to their room, crying, and locked the door. Since the parent was already tied up, Su Xingqi left to pursue the children. Su Xingqi picked up a pair of pliers, opened the door, and used more wires to restrain the children. He tied their hands behind their backs, covered their mouths and noses with tape, and put plastic bags over their heads. The children, Hiu Ing and Hiu Man, also suffocated shortly after. After killing the whole family, Su Xingqi was at a loss of what to do next. He turned to his home to think it over. He thought that hiding them in a ditch or body of water would be too easy to find, and that dismembering them would be too exhausting and time-consuming. So he settled on burying them on their own property. On July 6th, he returned to the home to try and clean up as many blood stains as he could find. He then got to work on digging the hole. He dug a hole deep and wide enough to hold the family of 4 and quickly placed their bodies inside of it. He also disposed of the murder weapons in the pit before filling it back in. The police believed Su Xingqi's story, despite being skeptical about his motive, and took him to the location where he claimed the crime had taken place. He pointed out the spot where the sharp knife, water pipe, iron pliers, and other tools used in the crime were hidden. On July 7th, the police called in the fire department to assist in unearthing the remains. The firefighters arrived with excavation tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. However, they quickly encountered a problem when they hit a layer of cement while digging. It turned out that Su Xingqi had failed to mention in his confession that he had filled the pit with cement before covering it up. The firefighters were unable to break through the cement with their tools, and the police had to call in a private engineering company for assistance. The engineers arrived with high-grade tools and began drilling through the concrete slab. However, when they reached a point where they saw human hair, they became uneasy and refused to continue digging, not wanting to encounter a dead body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to resume the excavation. After excavating the pit, authorities found it to be 2.5 meters wide and 6 feet deep. The bodies of the 4 family members were discovered at the bottom, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. Xing Fai's body was at the very bottom. His hands and feet were bound with electric wire, and he had multiple stab wounds to his abdomen, back, and neck, with his clothes stained red with blood. The other family members were similarly bound with electric wire. Yanyi's mouth and nose were covered with tape, her hands and feet were bound, and her face was distorted. 2 family members, Hiu Man and Hiu Ing, showed no obvious signs of trauma, leading police to suspect they may have been buried alive. Su Xingqi was formally arrested and interrogated. During the interrogation, he altered his confession. He admitted that he lied about the affair. Shan Hui kicked Su Xingqi out of the house and banned him from returning. Despite this, Su Xingqi came back to apologize and was surprisingly forgiven by Xing Fai. Su Xingqi returned to the house on July 3 to start working, and it seemed that his relationship with Xing Fai had been repaired. However, on July 4, Su Xingqi attempted to molest a family member. Su Xingqi fled the house in a rage, not wanting to alert the neighbors. The next day, Su Xingqi tried to force his way into the house again, claiming he wanted to apologize. However, Xing Fai had anticipated this and returned home early. They got into an argument, which escalated into Su Xingqi stabbing Xing Fai. Su Xingqi's later confession matched his initial one, but with the additional detail of filling a makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were taken away for autopsy, it was discovered that Su Xingqi's account of the events was inaccurate. The autopsy revealed that Xing Fai's murder was more brutal than initially described. Xing Fai had sustained 9 stab wounds to the head and neck, nearly 80 stab wounds to the body, and 10 stab wounds to the hands and feet. Contrary to Su Xingqi's claim, Xing Fai was strangled, not suffocated with a plastic bag. Hiu Ying's cause of death was the only accurate part of Su Xingqi's account. Forensic analysis of the home found at the cutlery and dishes did not have the family's DNA on them, but they did have Su Xingqi's DNA. This suggested that Xing Fai was not killed in the kitchen, but rather elsewhere in the house. The investigation also revealed that the murder was premeditated, as the cement used to bury the bodies had been purchased by Su Xingqi prior to the murder. Furthermore, the weapon used was not a kitchen knife from the family, but rather one belonging to Su Xingqi. Additional investigations by the police found that the family's bank cards had been used at an ATM after the time of death, but no money could be withdrawn due to repeated failed PIN number guesses. The cash and bank cards belonging to the family were also missing. Su Xingqi's motive for the crime was robbery, and it was premeditated. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in his story, he would suddenly come up with a new explanation. According to Su Xingqi, his family's ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs, and his 2 children required 100,000 in cash to cover their school fees. He was not well liked in his local community, so he knew it would be difficult to borrow money from his neighbors. He turned to Xing Fai for help because his business trips to Hong Kong had not generated enough income. Su Xingqi suspected that Su Xingqi was wealthier than he seemed and that he is very stingy. The reason for his low salary during his time working for Xing Fai was that they were exploiting him for low-cost labor. On July 3rd, Su Xingqi traveled to Hong Kong without informing anyone and waited until July 5th, when they had a day off from work. When Xing Fai returned home and found Su Xingqi there, he asked if he needed to cook something, and they men went to the kitchen together. Su Xingqi asked to borrow 1 million Hong Kong dollars, but Xing Fai rejected the request. He explained that he had to use the money for his mother's medical treatment and his daughter's education. However, Su Xingqi didn't believe him and accused Xing Fai of only using him for cost labor. Xing Fai became angry and ordered Su Xingqi to leave. As Xing Fai turned his back, with a concealed knife on, Xingqi attacked him from behind, covering his mouth and stabbing him. Su Xingqi then restrained in Hiu Ying and Hiu Man and began searching the house for cash and bank cards. He demanded to know the password for the bank cards, and Xing Fai intentionally gave him a fake password. Su Xingqi didn't realize this at the time. Su Xingqi claimed that he had killed others by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting a plastic bag over their head. However, when he went to the nearest ATM to withdraw cash, he discovered that the PIN number he had been given didn't work, and realized that Xing Fai had lied to him. Upon returning home, Su Xingqi discovered that everyone had suffocated to death in his absence. He found the food he and the others had been preparing and decided to eat it next to the 4 corpses while contemplating how to dispose of the bodies. After stealing $6,000 in Hong Kong dollars from Xing Fai's body, Su Xingqi buried the corpses and tools in a small pit, then went to sleep at Xing Fai home. The next morning, Su Xingqi realized that the smell from the bodies might lead to their discovery, so he bought cement and returned to the home. He dug up the pit, poured in the cement, and refilled the hole. Su Xingqi then stayed at the home to answer any calls to Xing Fai's cell phone or house phone, telling callers that he was taking care of things while the Xing Fai family is on vacation. However, Su Xingqi did not expect his ruse to be uncovered so quickly. Even later, he continued to lie about many details, including when he bought the cement and the cause of Yan Yi's death. At this stage, the police didn't think they needed to continue obtaining an accurate confession. In their opinion, they had collected enough evidence to proceed. The trial took place at the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010. Su Xingqi initially pleaded not guilty and altered his previous statement. He claimed that his original story about the affair was true and that Xing Fai was killed in self-defense, while Hiu Man and Hiu Ying were killed accidentally. The defendant stated that he had falsely confessed to extortion and murder brutality, which included physical abuse and suffocation. On November 23, the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict for the murders of Xing Fai and Yan Yi. However, the defendant was acquitted of murdering Hiu Ying. Despite this, the defendant received a life sentence for the 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The presiding judge criticized the defendant, describing him as lacking a conscience and being unrepentant. The judge also accused the defendant of fabricating the self-defense story and affair to tarnish the victims' reputations. After Xing Fai's family death, who lived in Hong Kong, surprisingly defended him. They accused Xing Fai of being a hypocrite and the real villain. According to them, Xing Fai was exploiting Su Xingqi for cheap labor and taking his money. However, the neighbors and residents of Ping Chi village were outraged by these claims, forcing Su Xingqi's family to move back to China to avoid the backlash. The crime was considered one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. The community showed an outpouring of support for the family Xing Fai's, with many visiting their home to offer condolences. Netizens also raised more than enough money to cover the funeral expenses. Additionally, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family. Every year on July 5th, the adoptive family would take the dogs for a walk in Pingchi village, near the home of their former owners. On August 9, 2022, 55-year-old Su Xingqi passed away in Hong Kong's Stanley Prison due to liver cancer.